Good evening and welcome to the Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union Tuesday, May 2nd regular meeting. If you'd all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. A motion would be in order. Motion by Mike. Discussion. I'd like to move Bill's presentation up from, where is that on here?
8B.
8B to right after the approval of the agenda. Add an executive session and add a public comment after 10. So going forward, we're going to have 2 public comments at each meeting. We'll have one at the beginning and one at the end. So if someone, something transpires during the meeting, then people have an opportunity to discuss that rather than just waiting until the next meeting. All right?
What's the executive session for?
Personnel. Sorry. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So before Bill starts, I just want to thank him for the time that he's put into the presentation and the work and collecting the data. The goal is this evening after Bill's presentation to ask any questions and have for us to have, you know, a fruitful conversation so that when Bill leaves this evening that he's leaving with the decision from us in order to move forward. Okay? All right, Bill.
Okay, just give me a second here. Does that... I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the GRSU on the slide, share. Okay, start slideshow. All right, thank you. Well, thank you, Jim, for moving me up to the front. I have another obligation tonight, but I thought this was very important to come in person and do, so I'm excited to be here and present to you tonight. I'm going to try to go through this real quick, if we could hold the questions to the end. I did present some of this to the executive board, and it was about an hour, so I know that we don't want to spend an hour on it tonight, so I'm going to just try to go through real quick, and then if you could save the questions to the end, that'd be great. So this was something of need for the SU, that we felt that we needed emotional wellness. That is something that's a crisis nationally right now, and certainly we're feeling that crisis in our SU from certainly children from trauma-based experiences and emotional disabilities as well. It's something that came up as a large need, so we did some research on this. And I'm just really off with my technology tonight.
You have to go back to your Google Doc to move it.
Oh, okay. So the objective, as we said, was to meet some needs of our K-8 students with emotionally based disabilities and trauma-based disorders. So we've done a lot of staff research on this. Some of the things that we've done is, we met, throughout the year we met, I don't know, this thing has a mind of its own tonight. We met staff toward, okay, we've met staff toward local therapeutic schools consisting of Allen Street Campus in Rutland Public Schools, Sheldon Academy at VAC in Rutland, Lehigh, and Poultney. We met with DCF and Rutland Mental Health to listen to see what we were experiencing in the region. We interviewed and consulted all the principals, used extensive collaboration time during strategic planning for district social emotional needs and understanding. We used a half-day district PD in January to bring all the student services together and performed activities that gave everybody input into the current social emotional program and needs. We collaborated with regional student service directors to understand what other districts are doing and the historical social emotional partnerships. We consulted with Northeast Regional Behavior Services contractors on current trends in the Northeast. We partnered with Lewis for student cost and staffing analysis. We opened an experimental K-6 trauma ED-based classroom at one of the elementary schools for an experiment to see how that would work this year. Our findings for the students is that 12% of our students fall in the emotional disturbed category. We had incomplete data on 504 and S trauma-based disorders. Anecdotal evidence shows a population of students whose needs are greater than can be met by social-emotional supports. Students with social-emotional disabilities and trauma-based disorder use more staff resources and have higher cost per pupil than other disabled students. They also tend to stop their learning and the ability of the teacher to teach at a high level, to teach at a rate higher than other students. Program findings. Current social-emotional systems identify unsafe students' behavior to have paraprofessionals or place students in out-of-district therapeutic schools. So essentially, we just have two things that we do right now, that we either add a paraprofessional to an unsafe child with behaviors, or we put that child in an out-of-district school. There's an educational workplace shortage of paraprofessionals. There are extremely limited number of slots available at our local therapeutic schools. Out-of-district placements are not equitable across the SU due to limited slots at therapeutic schools. There is no K-6 alternative education program in our SU. Culture findings. SU staff need more professional development and training for students with social-emotional disabilities and trauma-based disorders. School community not informed on educational laws and requirements for students with social-emotional disabilities and trauma-based disorders. The regional findings. There are no regional partnerships for student services between SUs. Rutland Mental Health is understaffed due to workforce shortages and unable to perform recommended services. Local therapeutic schools are understaffed due to workforce shortages and are not able to expand the number of students served. DCF can only provide limited local services. Northeast Contractor Behavior Services have difficulty serving our areas due to our geographical location. Most are based either up in Burlington or Massachusetts, New Jersey, etc. So, again, I'm just moving along quickly here, sorry. Option one, keep our current system. The pros are there's no financial risk because it has fixed costs. We know if we're putting a child at VAC or Lehigh, we know what that costs. And it's, you know, maybe I overstretch it. It's easy administration oversight because we just attend meetings. You know, I mean, it's easy in the fact that we don't have to do a lot other than show up at meetings and, you know, generally agree, and the schools do all the work. Students' needs are currently not being met, one of the cons. There are limited therapeutic schools, as I've stated before, and you know, there's a loss of learning for our children with disabilities and a loss of learning for our children without disabilities. And these emotionally and trauma-based students, unfortunately, create a lot of staff fatigue. So cost, I've identified 11 students for high needs next year in FY24. I just went based on 6 of those students who could potentially go out of districts. It could be less than 11, or, you know, it could be up to 11 or less than 6, but we had to come up with a number, and this is how we budget it. So we put a budget of $390,000 after applying excess cost reimbursement. That is not the cost of the school. We depend on a number of $65,000 because of the reimbursement over that. So a school could cost $100,000, and our share as an SU is $65,000. The state picks up the other $35,000. It's not quite. It's like 99% or loosely, but it's for our discussion we can call it 100%. So that's where I got that 390, and you can see as far as budgeting, it's very easy to do that because we know we would put in 390,000 for those 6 students. Option 2 would be therapeutic classrooms. Use 2 classrooms in a current building to create therapeutic settings based on cognitive behavior strategies, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and trauma-informed practices. We could serve 4 to 5 students from the SU who would be transported to the school as needed to be housed full-time at one of our hosting schools. The pros is there'd be a large opportunity to integrate students. The cons are learning disruptions to that school and school offering disruptions. If we were to overtake a music room or an art room or maybe a those types of things, it may interrupt some of the programming that school currently has. I mean, there isn't classrooms available readily right now in our schools. Staff acceptance, community acceptance. We would be taking children from around the district and placing them in one school. Obviously, there'd be more administrative responsibility and limited student enrollment if we're only enrolling 4 to 5 students. The cost of that program would be a program teacher, a counselor, 2 behavior tech specialists, supplies, program van, program PD, and consulting. And you can see the supplies, program van, and PD consulting would potentially, I mean, I would say they are, but you never know until you apply for the grant, would all be covered by IDA grant and some ESSER IDA grant that we have money that we still have out there as well. Option 3 would be create a GRCSU Emotional Wellness Center. We would lease the old RSWSU office in Poultney to create an emotional wellness center based on cognitive behavior strategies, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and trauma-informed practices. We could serve 10 to 15 students from around the SU who would be transported to the center as needed. The pros of that was we can, the IEP process allows us to do temporary placements up to 45 days, and the IEP process allows us to do partial day attendance. So a child doesn't need to attend all day. Some children are only capable of being in a attendant classroom for maybe 3 hours a day due to either trauma-based or emotional disabilities. They could spend 3 hours at the center and 3 hours at the regular school. And that way and then some of that we could reset learning with social curriculum understanding, and always the goal would be with a return to homeschool primary goal. I think it's important to note that when a child goes to VAC, a child goes to Lehigh, a child goes to an alternative day school in the area, we've almost lost that child. It is very, very difficult to get that child back. So if a child goes in 2nd grade to, like say, VAC, we could pretty much budget that child to be there 6 years. That's just kind of the nature of how special ed works. Another great con or pro would be partnerships with Poultney Elementary School to offer students in the least restrictive environment. Opportunities also to integrate students, obviously at Wells, Poultney High School, or the middle school portion, if you will, and at Middletown Springs as well. So a child, we've already looked at identifying a child, say at Wells, who is struggling with a full day of school, could, with some of the transportation that we have coming up already, could come up, spend some time in the morning, reset, get ready, and then spend the remainder of the day in the afternoon. This would give us the ability to start small and grow. We don't have to have 10 to 15 students, and we don't have to fully staff it to start out. I am meeting this Friday with Rutland Mental Health to see if we can decrease costs, especially that behaviors that you'll see coming up, to see if that can be funded by Rutland Mental Health. But there's not a lot, when we think of Rutland Mental Health, it truly is a lot around here. There's not a lot out in that Poultney kind of area as well. And they're looking, and there's needs all across Rutland County. We create offsetting income by partnership with other regional SUs. I think we're, given the research that we've done, that we have plenty of children that would utilize this center. But if for some reason we did a great job within our home schools, we don't have to close this down. We could offer slots to both the GRCSU and Slate Valley supervisory unions, and they would pay. You don't really make money, but we can apply that money to offsetting costs. We have ability to recoup money through excessive cost reimbursements too. If a very expensive student went there that required specialized transportation and required, more, say a one-on-one, those types of things, counseling and stuff, we still, with that child, we would only pay $65,000 because the rest would be, applies to a child no matter what their cost is, whether it's a private school or what services we get. Once we hit $65,000 on a child, that is reimbursed afterwards by the AOE. And I think this is a big one, that insurance against AOE funding formula changes. And I don't have a lot of time to get into this, but the current system that we have in Vermont is unsustainable. We have very few schools here, so a tendency, we put a lot of children out in residential programs that may or may not need to go. The cost gets to several $100,000, and this is across the state. So with that $65,000, I'm explaining to you that, you know, it probably will be up to 67 or 68 next year. They don't tell you what it is till next year. But at any time, they can move. That's a moving target, and it's a great way to make you create your own programs, because they could at any time make that $65,000 $100,000, and we would have no say in that. The cons: staffing needs increase as more students enroll. I mean, so if we get 15 students, then my staffing that I'm going to show you a little bit could be a little bit off. 45% of new businesses fail in the first 5 years. So, I mean, this is a business that we're trying. And I probably should add that, I don't know the stats, maybe Lewis does, but it's probably very few that make money in their first year. I mean, that's just the way they are, so that, we would be looking, at exactly, as same as a business and facing those problems as well. So option 3 costs: program teacher, counselor, 2 behavior techs, 0.5 driver custodian, supplies, program van, PD are all hopefully reimbursable by grants. And then you can see that we have a lease of $24,000, which I think is a very good rate right now for that SU building, with a total cost of $384,000. And then obviously the center can be started lower by student count. The only real money you would be, I mean, the rest of it's money, but as, if we didn't have any students show up, which that's not going to happen, but the district would really only be out of, you're taking a $24,000 kind of chance, if you will, next year, because if things went really bad, the only thing that we would really be in would be for the lease, and the rest, we just wouldn't hire the people and stuff, so it's certainly a risk worth taking. And given all that, my ranked recommendations for next year would be option 3, overwhelmingly, the GRCSU Emotional Wellness Center. Option 1 would be my second one, would keep the current system. And option 2, the therapeutic classrooms, would be my least recommendation. There's a lot of inherent problems with children with emotional disabilities and trauma-based disabilities being in a school. Then we need, like I said, we need some training with the staff, the community, and we have to do things much differently. And that's not you. That's each school in our district. So I think it would be a large challenge next year to try to pull that off. And I'm sorry I did go much quicker, but I did want to. I know you have a lot on your thing tonight, so if people have questions.
Hi, Joe. Okay, where is the GRCS? What school is currently doing the K through 6?
No one right now. We tried it in the fall, and we ended it. We tried it for about a month and a half, and we ended it.
Okay, ended it because it didn't work. Ended it.
Yeah. Yeah,
because it was a classroom base?
For a lot of different reasons, yeah. I think the student, one, we were trying to, shovel snow in a snowstorm, which is always hard.
Okay.
But also, I think it's hard, it is hard to do these in a school, and especially some of our smaller schools. I mean, you have children that are, and in fairness to the children that were involved, you have children, you're moving from one classroom to another. I don't know if that's overly therapeutic if the same people are around. There wasn't training done to the staff for acceptance, the community, so there was a lot of reasons.
I did a classroom at when I first started in teaching. They hired me, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah, I have no hope for a classroom base, because it's just very difficult.
Very difficult.
To do that. Under the cultural findings, were there any teachers involved? I know you went to the principals. Did any of the teachers get involved?
Yes, everyone. Not regular ed, but all special ed. All special ed service providers did.
And are these students that are in every school? So we would be...
Yes.
Okay.
So the 11 that I identified were from across the district, K-8.
Okay. And the other thing I would say is that one of your cons might be, if we're using the RSWSU, you'd want compute, which I think is a great idea, but you'd want the one you said for the con, which is community acceptance. If you're doing GRCSU, I think Poultney would accept GRCSU. If you're looking to expand the program and you're bringing in other kids, we might have to do some work in terms of, for lack of a better word, marketing.
Yeah.
That this is a good program, and because it's so good, we now can bring in revenue to offer it to other ones, because right now there is so much fear, which brings on a lot of anger, which we have. I can't imagine it's definitely in our town. I feel it, I'm hearing it from people, from parents, and if you're saying, oh, we're going to bring all these emotionally disturbed kids into our town, and the fear is going to be, oh, great. Whereas if it's presented in a way of, hey, guess what? This is going to help kids, it's going to help principals, it's going to help families.
Yeah.
You know, I think the way it's presented is going to have to be looked at and make sure that we come at it from a very positive, respectful way, which I know that we will.
Yeah.
But you're going to hit, no matter which town I think you hit, to have this program, you're going to have parents who are going to be a little skeptical. There's going to be those that are going to be like me, rah, rah, let's go. I think this is a great idea, but then you're going to have, because we are so far apart, we're going to have the opposite direction as well.
Yeah, those are great suggestions, thank you.
So I think option 3 is fantastic.
Thank you.
That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Colin?
With option 3, though, does it limit options for parents, or does it not? Like, if we have this available, is it the only channel, or do they say, hey, I'm still going to VAC, and now we're burdening that cost plus the facility cost?
Great question. That this isn't a catch-all, so we will have children that will go to out-of-district still. So I do want to make that clear, that there are some children, unfortunately, whose disabilities are so great that any public school would not be the appropriate placement. So I think what this gives us is the opportunity not to, under the current system, you know, we have 2 options, either to put a para with them or for the child to go to an out-of-district. I think what this does is kind of give us a bridge in the middle where we can say, and you know, through that 45 days, that gives us more time to make that decision along with the IEP team to say, is this really what we need, or was it the child's trauma anniversary and it was just a really bad 2 weeks that they had. So, but I do want to make it clear that this will not, we will have children that still go out of district. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Mike?
I have 2 questions. I'll ask the easy one first. Is that are the instructors and everybody involved, would they be under the master contract?
Yes.
And secondly, what is success and how do we measure it? And how do we know if we've accomplished it or if we failed?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, the success will be pretty easy. I mean, I think it's going to be anecdotal with the principals. I mean, we have children, it's very easy right now, Mike, because we have children that aren't in school. We have children that are waiting to go to placements and going half days. And we have teachers who are very concerned about some students right now out of those 11. So the success would be just having students have the appropriate education at this point. So I think that's where it's easier. Then I think we would then probably have to make some type of rubric or something after that. But there's an immediate need that would show success.
What do you mean by, is it in the master contract? Because I'm so new to this, would you explain that? Is that meaning that they would follow the contract for GRCSU versus a school contract?
So I think what Mike is asking, they'd be contracted employees. So, you know, we would
Oh, so just like we
would
do.
be contracted out. They would be our employees.
There would be our employees. Okay, so that's what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, they'd be subject to all the
Right.
benefits and risks.
Yeah. Yeah, they'd be SUs. And then the thing obviously would, make it high, if they wouldn't be subject to RIF, so if they came in, and we always need special ed teachers, so if special ed, somebody wanted to take a chance on this and it didn't work out, or maybe it's sometimes you don't want to work in a place like this for 10 years, but you want to do it for a year or something, so it does give us a lot of flexibility under the master contract.
Well, plus you can, there are so many people in teaching in colleges that are looking for placements like this,
Yeah.
because they know it's coming. You can also add some staffing just by adding some teachers that are about to, maybe their last year of graduate, and they need a placement for this. This is a great also opportunity to offer to,
Yeah.
Castleton, UVM, I mean, there are lots of things that you can do with that.
Bill, can I ask a...
Sure.
We talked about this, so it's kind of funny asking a question here, but I know along the same lines with Linda saying, is there opportunities for partnerships with, say, Castleton around, college students coming in who are doing work? Good.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of opportunities that we will continue, so.
Mike?
You mentioned that geographically it was hard for the Northeast to partner with us in some way.
Yeah.
Could we partner with anybody in New York that's close by?
No, I think I was talking about, so there's also a whole private business out there, and I think we were talking about that earlier with some contracts that we inherited and that Tina was bringing up at the beginning of the year. So you already contract, for one student, you contract with an ABA contractor out of New Hampshire. We are looking at somebody in New Jersey right now. So when I meant the Northeast, I meant the whole thing, and they tend to, what they do is they're entities with knowledge, they want to come up here, but the labor pool is the same labor pool we're drawing from.
You didn't mean Northeast Kingdom, that's
No.
why I took that.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
why, okay.
Yeah, it's an old, yeah, no, I meant the whole north, the whole Northeast in general, but most of these companies are located in New Jersey, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, around northern.
I just thought maybe because we were in the state, we can only contract with people who are in the state.
Yeah.
And if there was somebody in the Northeast Kingdom area but we can look beyond that.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing is for behavioral. We've got a lack of behavioral specialists, but if you could, click into the, again, educational piece of, you might be able to find people that come in for a 6, or a 4-month piece, fall in love with the program and say, if there's an opening, I'd like to, so you're opening opportunities to get more people to actually apply.
A lot of flexibility, I think
Yeah.
that's important, thank you.
Yeah.
Out of those 11 identified students,
Yeah.
is there a number that are currently being placed out of district, and the hope is to bring those students back?
As I said before, unfortunately, that number I think has gone down to 10, because I think we're placing one in the next 2 weeks at an out-of-district school. It is very, very difficult to get a child back, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of this program. I think once a child goes out and starts having success, you have to convince the teachers where the child left, the principal where the child left, the parents, who probably aren't too happy because their child had to. So when you're working with that IEP team, one of the hardest things to do is bring a child back. So I would say, unfortunately, you're kind of in that starting a new business, if you will, where we're going to try to limit greatly the number of children we send out and then move on from there. But I don't want to, sell this as we're going to be able to bring children. I mean, if parents want it, of course we'll entertain it, but in my experience, if things are going well, people don't tend to like to rock the boat.
So is this 24, 25 that we're looking for?
No, next year.
Next year?
Yeah.
Colin?
A couple questions, and I might have missed it. Like what the personnel licensure, what sort of person are we putting as an employee inside this class? And also to the tune of, what you were just saying, success or bringing them back. What's the different model about this that's going to bring them back to their original school? Are we just competing with the VACs and bringing it in-house? Is it a different? I don't have any experience being in VAC or any of these other locations, but are we going to be touting the marketing that it's going to be more of a place where they rehab and re-enter, or are we simply just creating that entity that we own now?
Yeah, good question. So your second question first. No, we are not going to be competing with VAC. We see this not as a long-term solution. So the idea is not to have somebody start there September 1st and spend their whole school year there and this be their school. That, if we were to create a school, that's a lot more work. And it's something that we would, look at. I'm not sure if we would do that. I'm not sure we want to get into competing with those other schools. They serve a very important service to Rutland County. So what we would be touting would be the ability to make better decisions. Again, going back right now, we just don't have time to make a decision. We put a para with a child who's emotionally disabled And frankly, it may not, it really doesn't work. I'm not sure what they're doing. They're kind of waiting around for the child to get in trouble and then intervene, and it's just not a great model. So when that model doesn't work anymore, we really have one choice left with that child going to out of district. Where this would give this a gift of time to work better with this child, and it would also allow us to see if the child's truly capable of being back in the mainstream, and many of them are. So that would be more of our focus, not to create a school at all that would house children.
Like a probation tank, if you will.
Well, I wouldn't, I would call it, a proactive tank, we'll call it. Yeah. And then the question would be, we would have essentially, we would have a teacher that would run the program. My hope is to get a counselor or a behaviorist. My hope is to get a counselor in partnership with Rutland County Mental Health. We would have a bus driver / custodian to do some things, and we would have some paraprofessionals over there. And that would be about it. But if it comes to 15, first of all, we're having a tremendous amount of success if we're having 15 students over there. But it would have to grow. You have to come up with some type of estimate. But if we had 15 students, we would be doing very well, and we would probably up the staff.
Okay, this is K through 6 only, or K through 12?
K-8.
K-8.
K-8 with a focus on K-6. I would say.
Okay, and are we going to be competitive with money to offer a behavioral specialist and/or a counselor to make sure? I mean, I think this is something wonderful, but we're competing with all other people in the Northeast, plus New York and every place. But if we made this, I think we have to start really give them a good salary and some benefits to get them to come in, and get them to buy into the fact that we're starting out. So a lot of people like the beginning of it and the start out.
Yeah, I think we're competitive.
Something.
I mean, we're regionally competitive with our contract now. I mean, we're not going to dip into Newton, Massachusetts, but I think we're very good
we
for
are
now.
Massachusetts, but I'm saying too is that
Well, we're constricted by the contract.
Yeah.
By
These would be negotiated
the,
positions.
yeah.
okay, and that means what?
So,
Explain it.
so
I'm
like a
sorry.
special educator would fall under the special ed
Oh, okay.
teacher scale.
Okay, but
or the teacher scale.
and the behavioral. Okay, I know teachers and
The counselor would follow the master agreement. Behaviorist is not currently part of the master agreement, so those are not. We have a few in the SU, and those are non-union positions.
Okay.
The paraeducators are.
But
part
they
of
do
the
fall in a
master.
certain, the behavioral specialists fall in a certain group, because you've got more than 2, I think, in the SU, right?
I believe we have 3.
Right, so they do fall
salaried
in a certain
behaviorists.
category. Okay, thank you, thanks.
All right, any other questions for Bill?
Will we feed them there?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to, the hope is, to be honest, Mike, is we're going to have the van there. We're going to be taking them to either the elementary school or over to the high school. I mean, they should be able to integrate and have lunch with other students. So, I mean, the nice thing, the area, I mean, you're just so close between those 2 schools.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree about the, what did you say about VAC? Because I think in the time, we only took in my 8 years, or 9 or 10 or whatever, we only took 1 child out of VAC. And, yeah, it's a tough call.
All right, what's the feeling of the board based on the proposals? The options?
I think it's worth a try.
Is that in the form of motion?
I would like to make a motion to go ahead with option 3 as recommended by Bill.
What was that motion? It was unclear.
Tina made the motion to go forward for next year with option 3, which would be leasing the building in Poultney and running our own program. Any additional discussion about that? Concerns, questions?
Well, what's,
I guys, I would just say, and I apologize if this has been on the table for longer than now, but I don't have enough information nor time to digest to make a vote personally on this tonight. I'd like some more time. I certainly like how it was outlaid. I wouldn't disagree with the way the options. One, I would have done 3, 1, 2, but I would need more time to deliberate myself. That's just me.
Has this been going on for a long time, this discussion? Because I've only...
we've had the discussion before Bill came. I mean, we had the discussion when you were on the board
Okay.
prior. I mean, this isn't a new discussion.
So for the past year, this has been discussed because
I think
Bill's
we've been
been here?
discussing it for about 4 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've been discussing different options. That's why we tried to do it in a school. We've looked at the number of students. We've looked at the difficulty we've had in placing students. We've looked at the shortages of, difficulty with special ed teachers, with paras, with, as Bill said, just some of the time frame with discussions, a child has some kind of outburst or something in the classroom, and suddenly all these decisions are made in a very quick fashion, where this gives us the opportunity. I mean, that 45 days may not seem like a lot, or maybe it does seem like a lot, but to have that opportunity to take the child out of the environment, put them in with all people that are really just focused on this type of child and assess them, so that we're doing, I think this is really a program where we can say, as an SU, we are doing what's best for the student.
Right, and, well, I guess my question was, see, I don't have a problem with this because I've lived with it and dealt with it. I agree with you, but I can see why other people, if it hasn't been like a discussion in terms of bringing it and talking for a couple of months, I have no problem.
Well, this is something, we bring it to the board, but it's something that Chris, myself, Louis, and Lisa, we discuss it probably weekly at our CO meetings, and like I said, I've done extensive research.
I have no problem with that. What I'm saying is that people who don't have the experience of dealing with this kind of behavior and on a daily basis, as teachers do, they may be a little skeptical because it didn't get to be discussed. But if I could offer support to those people, I would say that this is probably one of the best. This is so good. This is so good for kids. This whole, even if I hadn't heard of it just tonight, this really, as a teacher and a board member and a parent and a grandparent, this is really good, and this will change kids' lives. It will change their behavior, because if you don't, the teachers are not behavioral specialists. They are teachers in the classroom, and they are dealing with behaviors that are so difficult than they were 10 years ago when I was doing special ed. So to offer this opportunity to get these kids to teach them new behaviors, because that's what you're doing. You're telling them, this is not working, we're going to help you. And we all know how hard it is to change a behavior. Okay, you think of yourself, whatever it is that your wife or child is telling you, and you think, oh, I've heard this before, I'm not doing it. But we have people who actually know how to do this. That is what their job is. You can see it change. I saw it as a special educator. I saw these behaviors change with a behavioral specialist, because they came in, they supported, they wrote things down and helped this child who came from this, because you don't know where they come, you don't know where they're going, but in the 6 hours during the day, they are given the support and the education on how to change their behaviors. This is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for this SU. If I could vote 5 times, I would vote for it, because it's so
Well, I
good.
think we've all seen the program in our own districts,
Yep.
too. We've spoken about that at district levels. I know in Corey Valley, we have difficulties with finding placement for students. But I think the biggest piece that Bill spoke to, and I can think of students locally that are in my community that aren't in the building. So we are educating them in accessory buildings, I'll say, in our community. just so that we're providing them some level of education for whatever reason. And so a program like this is opening up that opportunity to help maybe be that step to get the student back into the school and back into their community, because it really is disappointing that when we send a child out that they really are out of your community, you know, and it's hard for a kid to come back and not be part of that group anymore. And we've all seen it in our communities. None of our communities are that large that you don't know that or who that child is or when it's happening. And it's tough. And, you know, we're essentially saying that we're willing to take a risk of the $24,000. I mean, the bulk of it, the rest of it is going to be funded under special ed through grants and like that. So, I mean, a yes vote is saying that we're willing to risk $24,000. And honestly, in the years that I've sat here and seen where we have spent money, this is a pretty good bang for your buck, in my opinion. But, Mike?
I guess I need some reassurance here. If this building was on one of our campuses, okay, we wouldn't have that expense. That expense is really a minor expense when you look at the total school budget overall for what it's going to do. Who would be in charge of that? If that building was a separate building on one of our campuses, who would be in charge?
Good point.
I would be, or, yeah, I mean, we have, in this case right here, we've got some coordinators that work under me, Tiffany and Katie Loomis, so we're going to be intimately involved in overseeing this.
So really what we're doing is saying that because we don't see a space on any of our campuses right now, we need to rent this other building. Okay.
No, I would be hesitant. We don't have a good space.
Well, that's
Yeah.
right. I just excuse that part for a
Right,
second.
yeah.
So when that's set up, who's going to be, where does the buck stop?
Me.
You.
Yeah.
Okay. So that doesn't change, does it? Doesn't matter whether it's on our property or we're renting a property, you're the one.
I'm the one that has to make all the tough decisions, make sure it's running right. You know, obviously, I'm lucky to have people that the board supported that I can delegate that to, but in the end, it's me.
So the management of that really wouldn't change, no matter where it is, other than maybe you've got a custodian that may need to do some stuff there.
Yes.
Some of the minor stuff like that, okay?
Yeah.
But basically, it wouldn't change no matter
It wouldn't
where
change.
it is.
There are none of your principals who have the capacity to take this on, add this to their workload.
So the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
Are there any time considerations on getting a lease on this building?
Louis, I think we did, we were lucky to get a one-year option. Again, if it goes poorly, we can get out in 1 year. They could, always gambling, they could raise the price on us, but we did a 1 year and a couple-year option, I think, right, Louis? That we said
We have a 1 year with an option to renew it for 2 more years, at 1 year at a time. There was another interested party that was looking at leasing the building. I think they were giving, I don't know if things fell through with them or if they're just giving us the first option or not, but right now it's open to us. We just have to let them know as soon as possible.
Thank
I
you.
mean, we leased that building for, I think it was almost 20 years. I mean, we never had any issues. They were always good to work with. They cover electricity, heating, so the expense is minimal. It's just really your base rent and then having somebody come in and either clean it and remove the trash and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments?
Can they cook in there? No, they're going to go up to the schools.
Yeah, but there is a little, believe it or not, there's a little kitchen there.
Okay, all right.
Colin?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that this is not a good idea and that it'll be successful for children, but I think someone asked, how are we defining success? And the gamble, I guess, is $24,000 in your mind, but we're starting a new program, which then turns into more money. Grants aren't guaranteed renewable, so at some point, it becomes an added expense to the budget. How are we going to define success? Are we going to, as a board, have a 3-5 year statistical measure to say, hey, our reentry data shows us 30 to 40 kids are coming here, it's working, they're coming back, we want to keep this program, or is it not working? Do we have that in writing? Do we have a plan, or is this just, let's try it out? I'd like to see a little bit of concrete, like, here's what we're committing to, because eventually it's going to add to a permanent expense down the line. And I'd like to be able to say this is successful because, not just adding on a program. And I'm not, and again, this is coming from a place where obviously I think any amount of support we can add to all children is going to be greatly successful. But, you know, we're using resources that could be in all the individual schools right now too. So what's going to be our measure?
Yeah, I think, and again, I do apologize.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, Colin, to answer your question, that it's hard to explain the money portion because, again, when I identified 6 students, so we're committing, either way, this program, let's just say all 3 options are going to cost $400,000. So you're committing resources already, $400,000 to these children next year, no matter what. So you're either doing it by sending them out to the schools, having therapeutic classrooms, or having this program. But all 3 options, you're spending $400,000. So in essence, there are no new costs, if you will.
Well, potentially 6 kids could decide not to go here and go elsewhere. So now it's not 4, it's 8.
That's the gamble we always take. I mean, you could have a family. You could have a family of 2 students move in that we had. It happened to one of our small elementary schools this year. A family with 2 out-of-district children that were already out of district moved in the first day of school. So that's unfortunately those are things we just can't plan for.
So, but I think what Bill is also trying to say is, so I mean, we'll staff this based on the attendance, and so we're talking about a program where. You're not talking about a program like a school where you have 1 teacher and 15 kids. You're talking about a program where the staff-to-student ratio is going to be very low because of the high needs. So, I mean, if you have 6 kids and you have 3 staff and you get 2 more kids, then you add more staff, you add another staff member or something like that. So it's not an economy of scale type thing where you need to have a lot of kids to offset your cost. We're paying for these kids no matter where they go, whether if they go to VAC or Lehigh or if they come to our program, we're going to have a cost. And so if they come to our program, if they're placed in our program because that's where it's going to be best for them, then we would add the staffing on an as-needed basis to accommodate that student need. I mean, I guess we've been talking about this, like I said, for about 3 or 4 years, and I think Bill has provided more information than ever before as far as the discussions go. And at some point, we have to just jump in. It's going to be hard to define success until we start the program and see the results of it. But at some point, we just have to take the gamble. And as Bill said, I mean, a $24,000 gamble in special ed, fortunate to say, is just a small price to pay.
May I ask a quick question? On option 1, I still have my same motion out there, but on option 1, I just wanted to clarify. So you identified 6 kids, but there were 11 total that needed help.
I'll be quite frank, there's 11 that I feel would probably look next year, and 6 are physically assaulting teacher and staff right now. And that's the level I'm talking about.
And then how many students do we have right now that are not in placements because we can't find a spot for them?
This year, I would probably say, I would probably say 6 to 7 right now that I'm going K-8. I would probably say we've got to call.
So there's 6 or 7 kids that we maybe could have helped for at least 45 more days to help get to, or give them a transition, or figure out how to get them back to the students by giving them some extra support for a while. So right now there's 6 or 7 kids out there, Colin, that aren't getting anything. If we do nothing, that's going to continue. If we do something, we may be able to reach all of these kids.
Right.
Yeah. This is a different time. It's a very different time right now. We're coming out of COVID, if you talk to your base teachers, the people that are in there right now, they will tell you, the 30-year-old that have been there for 30 years will tell you, this is a different time. We are in a different time. And if we do nothing, we have kids going out there that really need this support. And they, principals, you talk to your principals, they're having, we all put on a good face, but the thing of it is this is the reality of life, and we have to face it, and we can't pretend that it's not happening. It is happening, and in order to support our schools and each other and our teachers, and we need to look at it in a different way, and I think this to me is a very good option, very good option. I was a special educator for many years. I did an apartment program, and then I was brought home into the school system at a time when it was ready for me to come home back into the school. Sometimes the need is great, and you have to make a leap of faith. When they did the apartment program, we made a leap of faith to get those kids into that program. We didn't know where it was going to end up. It turned out really well. I think this could turn out very, very well. But we have to take a leap of faith with the people that have done the work of putting this together. I think this is this is a very good thing.
Okay, Mike?
We find sometimes with the state and with federal government that nothing ever sunsets. And it'd be marvelous if we could make this program work and it sunsetted because we didn't need it anymore. But I would really be more enthusiastic for it if in the motion we would put a proviso that there'd be for a one-year trial so we could see how we're doing, because we have a one-year contract, it sounds like, on the property rental, so it would seem reasonable that we try this for a year to see how it is, so it doesn't become.
That was the whole point. Yeah, I mean, you can put in the motion, but that's always the point, that if, we're going to try it, we're always shifting. If it's not working, I'm not one to.
Everything's on a one.
Yeah.
It's on a one-year contract, the employees are on a one-year contract, so.
Well, it's the same thing when you put the kids in the school, and you said it's not working, or you did what you did before, and it's not working. So we have to trust.
Anyone that hasn't spoken to the motion have a comment?
May I amend my motion?
Sure.
Just to add that I'd like to see how this is going next year after we've tried it for a year. And
So
just sign up
So option 3 for 1 year and review.
and revisit. Yep.
Was option 3?
Option 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we're doing the right option.
Yeah, it was option 3 with my recommendations. I probably should have done a better job.
Okay,
at
that's
that.
okay. I just
That
want
way
to
we
make sure.
can kind of hear how it went.
I think it's
before
very
we-
important for me to report back in the board next spring.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Are you in favor, Meredith, or opposed? In favor. Okay, Colin?
Let's abstain. I don't have the ability to vote right now.
Okay, we'll say it passes by majority then. All right,
Okay,
thank you, Bill.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to public comment. Is there anyone present that would like to speak to an issue not on the agenda at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. April 4th, the motion would be in order. Motion by Mike, just,
Sorry, I just had one little thing to, on the minutes, Tiffany's Patterson, who's one of our employees' name was misspelled. It should be Tiffany with 3 I's, Tiffini. And it was under public attendance, I guess, at the beginning on page 1. And it was also in the MTSS update on the same page.
okay. All right. All those in favor with that update?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of warrants. You receive your warrants through your GRCSU email. All questions should be referred to Lewis. Yeah.
You changed your name,
I
Lewis.
apologize.
Chris, do we need to pick up that mic between you and Eric? I can grab it. You got it?
A motion would be in order for the approval of the warrants.
So moved.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Superintendent's report. Chris?
Thanks, Lisa. Just a few items to discuss. I know that Lisa Madison will talk a little bit more about this during her report, but we did begin the VitCap cognitive testing. I know that Lisa, myself, the building admins have been talking for months now about some of our concerns with the rollout and the administering of this assessment, and some of our concerns have come to fruition. I think there's been a lot of technological glitches. I do want to thank Albert Grigorich, Bill Gardner, Greg Connors for their tireless work behind the scenes, just nonstop, just addressing these glitches. I also want to just publicly thank our building admins and our staff and our students for their flexibility and understanding just for the past week and a half. He said we anticipated some issues, and he said we have seen issues, and it's not just with us, it's across the state. But we've been, people have been very patient, very understanding with handling of this. But like I said, Lisa can talk a little bit more about this during her report, moving forward. But hopefully this will be just a one-year thing that next year during the VitCap and Cognitive, they'll have all these issues kind of ironed out. And I think a lot of them are just on platforms and just, as schools are using different, devices and just how that works on, say, a Chromebook as opposed to some other device. So, yeah. In here also is just information around graduation. We just put something about the early childhood screening and summer programming. And just want to remind our board about the strategic plan. Our goal is to bring a draft of the plan to the board next month for review, potential adoption. But we also know that it's review, and we have to go back and make some edits and some changes. But we do have that built into the plan. I have provided an updated PCB sampling schedule. I know that as we look at what's going on the legislative session, there is discussion about whether or not there will be a pause. As of right now, we are continuing to move forward unless we're told otherwise, but this will give you an idea in terms of where we're at. So we have had 3 schools have been tested thus far: Polton Elementary, West Rutland, and Proctor High School. We have received 2 results back for Polton Elementary, which was in the fall, which the residents of Polton were notified that we did detect some levels of PCB in our school. We have taken the appropriate remediation mitigation, and the good news was that where it's detected, we could still bring kids back safely, so there's no disruption to learning. That's always been our concern, is if there were any levels of PCB detected in our schools, what sort of disruption would cause for students and for our building. And fortunately for Polton Elementary, there was minimal to no disruptions, and we were able to kind of still operate, and we still continue to do sampling there as we speak. Proctor High School received results back, and there was no action needed. So Proctor High School was given the all clear, and then West Rutland we have not received the results back as of yet, so we'll wait to see where we're at. So, but we'll continue to keep you posted with that. We have Lewis and I have put in for the grant, through the grant management system, because there is right now an 80-20 split where the district will pay for the cost of it, then we'll be reimbursed 80%. But like I said, if we look at the House draft, we looks at 100% reimbursable, but we're not there yet. So that's where we're at with PCBs. And then the last is just the legislative report. There's a lot of information here for you. I don't really have to make comments because, like I said, a lot of these are still, they're not solidified yet. So once we start to see bills start being passed, I think at that time then we can start discussing the potential impact or what impact it may have on there. I mean, there are some bills that we are keeping a very close eye on, what sort of impact it may have on our schools. But to speculate or to discuss right now, I think we'd rather wait until we kind of see where we're at with that. So.
Which ones are the highest priority that you're watching?
Well, I think, the PCB is, because of just the potential cost.
Yeah.
We're also looking at the, universal school meals is just one that, continue to be concerned about. The, school safety is always, concerned, but I think I'm not necessarily concerned about school safety, just would be more just shifting in terms of what we do, particularly about options-based responses and just updating our emergency operation plans. And, so once we know that, we have to quickly pivot over the course of the spring and the summer to make sure things are ready to go for the fall.
Okay.
There is one bill that, let me see what I just, it's all right. It's the, where's it at here? I can't remember the name of, sorry, it's a,
Take your time. Okay.
I was just looking at this today, so it'll come back to me, because I just was talking about this today. It's the, guys, I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay.
So,
It's okay.
well, I mean, the pre-K study's been pushed back, so we're okay there. Some of our school districts, the private school, tuition is just something to keep an eye on for us as well. But there's one bill that centers on redefining HHB and what that is around, and so I think that's something that's, there's been a lot of testimony around waiting for federal, as the feds redefine what these HHB guidelines,
Okay.
and particularly around liability for schools, particularly around First Amendment and speech. It is something that we're keeping a close eye on, because it could drastically alter or shift HHB in schools, as well as liability for schools in terms of what occurs in there and how much we're really responsible for.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have questions about the BP cap, but is that better for, say, for Lisa, or?
You can go and I'll ask what I can, and then Lisa will.
Okay, I just wanted to know, like, with all the glitches and issues with the software, are assessments still being able to be done efficiently, or?
So Lisa, I think I'll let you ask. 'Cause I know you've been, with the assessment, you've been dealing with it more closely. So.
Absolutely. So thank you. So in most cases, students have been able to get back on at this point. Earlier last week, when we came back from break, there were a few days where classes were ready to log on and ready to go, and the system was unable to work for them. And just completely didn't work. And so in that case, each school handled it sort of differently. Some schools said, well, we're ready to test, so we're just going to do a different assessment. We'll do a district-based assessment today instead of VitCap, and make good use of the time and everybody's schedules, and just roll with the punches and make it happen. Other schools chose to amend their testing schedules and try again another day. So it sort of depends on the school how they responded, but it seems like the software application that creates a secure browser is the challenge that is happening across our state. It's called TestNav, and it works very well on some machines, and it does not work very well on others. So Al and Neil today were going around doing forced reboots of devices like Wipeout and reprogram Chromebooks that have been problematic, and updating all the pieces that need to be updated, and reconfiguring those machines to make sure that they can accommodate the browser and do what needs to be done for testing. But we're definitely not alone in this situation. Our teachers have been amazing in being flexible and patient, and in getting their students ready to be flexible and patient, and that we're gonna give this a try and see what we can make happen. And some classes have been able to log on with just maybe one or two devices that are not functioning the way that they need to. In other classes, it's been a bigger issue. So they're sort of chasing down all the tech issues and on tech support with Cognia. As Chris said earlier, Al and Greg and Milt have just been lifesavers working on the technical end of this to make it roll out for everybody, and everybody, students, staff, everyone has been so patient in supporting it.
Yeah, I did see that this was like a statewide struggle, and I was also curious if, that, you'd be able to plug away and get assessments done throughout the whole SU, and there would be enough data to compare next year.
Yeah, I mean, we have to finish the VITCAP. We have to administer that to every student prior to the state deadline. They did extend that deadline by 2 weeks already.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens with it. But schools are going to be working really hard on that, and we'll make sure that they've got whatever they need to pull that off. And then for our internal assessments, what we did was we opened up the testing window for FastBridge and MAP as wide as we could open it, so that they're nationally normed for spring, and they have specific dates that the test is normed for the beginning of the spring term and the end of the spring term. And we have opened that whole window up to our schools. Usually we pick a time frame during that window, but in this case we've opened them both so that our schools have as much flexibility as possible in assessing students. And those are our internal assessments, so we have a lot more control over what our expectations are and how we make that happen. The state assessment is our non-negotiable, so that needs to be our priority right now. We'll keep chipping away at it.
All right, thank you.
Lisa, I know the AOE's been approached about calling this a pilot, which they don't feel they have the authority to do that. My question are the results of this test, the new test, going to be tainted in any way? Something we need to keep track of as we look down the road when we compare it to the next year and ongoing?
Yeah, thanks. That's George, right? Thanks, George.
Yes.
A number of state level organizations, Vermont Superintendents Association, Vermont Principals Association, Vermont Curriculum Leaders Association, and the Teachers Association had all written a letter to the Interim Secretary of Education, as you referenced, asking for whatever permissions could be allowable for this testing event, given that the timeline and the rollout has been rushed. What provisions could she make for schools to sort of minimize the impact? Because accountability is pretty serious for schools. I mean, first we look at this to try to make programmatic and instructional decisions for children, right? Yeah. But in addition to that, then the state holds us accountable on our performance on these assessments and shares those results with the public. So it's fairly high stakes in terms of how assessment goes in the state of Vermont. It's not just about using assessment to inform learning and teaching. It's about using assessment for external judgment. And people don't like being judged when they don't feel like it's been fair, right? So, and what the Interim Secretary of Education responded was that under the federal regulations for the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, we are required to have a state level assessment administered annually as part of that federal funding formula, and all of our funding is tied to those requirements. The waiver period for states to apply for an exception, like we were able to do during the pandemic, has long since passed. And she does not think that technical challenges in a rollout would have qualified us anyway. And so the reality of where Vermont sits at this moment is that we must administer an assessment to students every year, and that there is one assessment currently available in our state, and this is the one, and we're all going to make the very best of it. That said, George, you've got to think about this data. So normally in a year where you're using a system that you're familiar with, your students and staff have access to resources and tools. And I won't say that they help you prepare for the test, because that's not our goal. Like, we don't want to waste instructional time preparing for a test. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to evaluate the effectiveness of your curriculum and the effectiveness of your teaching against the standards being measured and the format of that measurement on the assessment. So in our curriculum documents, we had all of the SBAC interim assessments linked into our curriculum documents for teachers, so they could see if I taught a unit on fractions, I can go into the SBAC system, I can give this quick little 10-question test to my students from SBAC, that as the questions formatted like SBAC's questions and ask them to perform these tasks the way that SBAC will ask them to, and then I can look at their results on that assessment and learn as a teacher, did my instruction rise to the level of performance that students are going to be asked to perform to at the end of the year? Are there certain question types or formats that they struggled with? How does this assessment and the questions on it compare to the ones I asked them? And was my assessment rigorous enough? Are there things I could add to it? So there's a lot of learning for teachers all year long that was directly related to their curriculum based on the tools and resources that we had available to us with the SBAC system. We are hearing that those resources will be available in Cognia sometime, but we don't have them right now. And so all of the normal kinds of activities that teachers would be doing using the tools related to an assessment have not been accessible to us this year. So will there be a difference in how teachers are utilizing a resource to prepare for a state assessment from a reflective and instructional standpoint? Yes, there will. There have been some resources available, though. We did have access to practice tests, so students and teachers could see the format of the exam and some sample items of what it would be. They didn't have a lot of time to look at those. They weren't released to us until March. And so, again, a smaller window, but some teachers were able to use that a little bit with students and in their own assessment development. So it'll be really interesting to see, George, what the resources look like when they do a full rollout and what we have available to us that we don't now. But right now it's difficult to assess what the difference is going to be until we get there and we see what it looks like.
Sounds like the only way is up.
Forward. The only way is forward. So we're going, right? Yeah, and for this year's rollout, the only way is up.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Chris?
I just wanted to, Linda, the legislation I referenced was S103. That's what I was talking about.
Thanks.
On harassment, discrimination, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, Lisa.
So we're administering VitCab. Just kidding. That was a large portion of what I was going to talk to you about tonight as well. It's been obviously a big focus for everyone right now, and just trying to support our staff who are being so patient and flexible and working through this and helping our students keep the right frame of reference and the right attitude about it too. That we're all in this together and we're going to make it work. It's one minute at a time. And otherwise, this time of year is really about wrapping things up and planning. And so we're wrapping up our work on the recovery plan. We're wrapping up our grants and all the expenditures for the year and the reporting that we need to do. And similarly, we're in the planning phases. So we're getting ready to, and some schools have already started, working on their continuous improvement plans, and then lining up all of our other planning with our strategic plan efforts, and the work that we're doing in framing that work. And so that's the big focus right now for us, getting things wrapped up for this year and getting planned for next year. We have some shifts and changes, as you're aware of, and how we've done things in the past. So we'll be doing a little bit more work with our principals around professional development planning for next year, and we'll be wrapping up our PLC groups and curriculum. And I'll be bringing updates on the curriculum work and the recovery plan work to you in meetings right after the end of the school year, whenever they fit well on your agendas, just so you have some closure on the pieces and where we're going with those. And then if anybody has any questions.
So I have a couple of questions. Do we anticipate next year we'll still have a recovery team and recovery planning?
No, the Agency of Education has indicated that requirement is going to end at the end of this school year. So we have, our team is wrapping up and pulling together final pieces, and then all the work that is still ongoing from that recovery plan process is either aligned and captured already in some of our preliminary strategic plan goals and activities, or will be led into school continuous improvement plans. So we think that anything that's kind of unfinished business that's still important and the right things for students, we've identified routes for that work to continue moving forward, but within our other district structures, not a separate team.
Okay. And earlier we heard Colin ask about how we measure success, and this is something we've spoken about several times. How are we measuring success for the mentor coordinators? We had talked about that there was going to be perhaps a rubric or something like that, because it seems like every year we have a large number of those, or we'll see one instructor that has multiple mentees. And so how are we measuring that success?
Yeah, so we have a 3-pronged evaluation that goes out each spring. The first is to actually it's 4-pronged, I would say. I just recently sent a communication out to our principals asking them sending them the list of our current mentors and asking them if they have any feedback on folks who they think would be great mentors who are not on that list. Or folks who are on that list who might be overextended in some other way, and we might want to think about trying to ease back on their commitments to allow them to focus on other leadership activities or things they're working on right now. Then we send out a survey to current mentees, current mentors, and to principals that specifically asks about feedback on the effectiveness of the mentoring program, things that were successful, things that could be improved in the future moving forward. And then the coordinators meet with me at the end of the school year over the summer. We go through all of that survey feedback, and then we make refinements to the program based on that feedback.
Okay, thank you. And have we, do we have the curriculum coordinator position currently advertised? Have we interviewed for that yet?
We do. We have it advertised, and Chris and I were just talking about this yesterday, and we'll be scheduling interviews in the coming week or two.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we have one internal candidate. We have 3 external that have applied. Correctly.
There's a couple. I can't remember how many exactly.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to contract recommendations. Professional staff. Rachel Greenia, Proctor Elementary Math and Literacy Interventionist, $46,535, grant funded. Sabrina Braun, Middle School, Middletown Springs Interventionist, $53,429, 50% grant and ESSER and 50% local. Cindy Wagner, Pulteney High School Special Ed, horizontal move from $49,982 to $54,291. Sandy Salerno, Corey Valley Secondary Literacy Interventionist, $71,526 grant. Support staff FY24 new hires, Megan Watkins, Pulteney Elementary Special Ed Para, $16.19 an hour. Extracurricular for FY24, Amy Lear, Proctor Elementary Summer Assistant, $20 an hour, ESSER funded. Virginia Turso, Proctor Elementary Summer One-on-One Support, $25 an hour, ESSER funded. Rachel Vandenberg, Proctor Elementary Summer Assistant, $25 an hour, ESSER funded. Sydney Wood, Proctor Elementary Summer One-on-One Support, $17, ESSER funded. The motion would be in order to approve the contract recommendations as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Linda, discussion.
I was curious about the difference in pay for the extracurricular.
That sounds like a Lewis question.
Because it looks like some of them are similar positions.
So we have a different rate structure. So current employees that are in our buildings that are paras or teachers are making the rate for the enrichment program. They're making $25 rate. If they're not current contracted employees, either paras or teachers, then it's a $20 rate.
So why is 117?
And then we have I believe that's probably a student. So we also have student rates. So we have a high school rate, and then we have I think it's a college student rate.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Resignations. Julie Walensky, Proctor Elementary and Proctor High School SLP, effective end of FY23. Patricia Thomas, GRCSU, Occupational Therapist, effective end of FY23. Alexa Ritchie, PRES Para, effective 5/5/2023. A motion would be in order to accept the resignations as presented. Motion by Mike. Discussion?
Maybe this is more for executive session, but I was curious about some of, potentially exit interview information or anything like that for some of them.
None of the employees are request exit interviews, but if they do.
Is that something that we can request, just to find out so that we have that knowledge?
We could request, but they don't have to, because I know that in letters that have been submitted, they provide reasons for.
Did they provide letters? I didn't get them this time.
The letters come in your, or in your email,
I
in
didn't
the
see.
attachment. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I didn't look at my email. I just looked at the packet, because usually Christine prints them all off.
So we did, in discussion with Christine, we're trying to make the additional, I have one full packet here and make the other package just the necessary. So otherwise, it takes so much time for Christine to make packets for everyone. And that was why we, you also should have received, like, you have access to all the Google Docs now, so that you can go in and pull those up. And so that was just an internal discussion that we had. So, like, we had talked about before, I have a copy of the warrants, if somebody has a question on the warrants, because they're sending all the information out in sufficient amount of time. So I have all the letters here, if you'd like to read through them.
I would.
Okay, I can pass them around too.
I didn't realize when I asked for a packet, it wouldn't have everything that she sent in the email.
No, we're not doing that, because we've already sent them in the email, and she's created that Google. I'm telling you, it's like,
I like Dougal. That's good. Very
it's a
good.
document.
It's a GRCSU is a Dougal.
But she created, did everyone receive that also, so you can go in and go back, and so it's trying to cut down the work for Christine, so that once she sends things electronically, there's not so much copying for her, because if everybody needs a packet, it just is a lot to make a packet for everyone.
It's a cost savings too. I mean, there's a lot of paper and.
So we decided
I didn't realize what would be included, what wouldn't.
So we decided to make one full packet that has everything in it, and then if somebody needs that, he can have it to look at. So at our Corey Valley meetings, everybody brings like their own like laptop or whatever. No one's like sitting with paper, so. All right. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on. Lewis.
Okay, so the first item is the forecast that was in the packet. So included was just the central office forecast. We are anticipating a surplus at the SU for this general fund. That hasn't changed since the last forecast that went out in January. Currently, that surplus is estimated to be around $150,000. The question that I'll have for the board is a lot of that will depend on how much we want to pull in indirects off the ESSA grant. So in all of our federal grants, we're allowed to pull indirect revenue from those grants to be able to apply it towards our budget to help offset cost. And by doing that, the the purpose of that is to go towards the things that we can't put into the grant. So there's a cost associated with running of payroll and accounts payable and the managing of those grants. And those are what they call the indirect costs of running a grant. So they allow us to pull a percentage of those grants out for indirect costs, and it's usually anywhere between 3 to 10% depending on the grant. So we currently have not pulled any of the indirect costs out of the ESSER 2 grant. By the end of this year, we will have spent most of the ESSER 2 grant. So that'll be, by the end of this year, that'll be the last thing that's outstanding, and we can pull $160,000 off of that grant. We haven't pulled anything out of the ESSER 3 grant yet. That one, that grant we just started spending this year, and we'll be spending that for another year and a half. So we have plenty of time to pull those indirects out. Right now, based on the budget, we had budgeted $180,000 in indirect revenue. And I haven't pulled indirects out of any of our other federal grants yet, so like Title, IDB, the AWARE grant. So the question that I will have, and we don't need an answer tonight, is we could either increase or decrease the surplus amount based on how much of the ESSER 2 indirects we decide to pull. So, and basically, so the question will be, do we want to push that revenue into next year, or do we want to pull as much as we can this year and increase that surplus, and in the end that will be given back to districts next year as an assessment refund. So,
And when did we, like, before we said we were returning that, like, July, August, right?
so we will need to make that decision.
Or after we're audited?
No, we would need to make that decision probably, since we meet early, beginning of July, we can make that decision.
Okay.
If we don't meet in July, then we would need to make that decision in June.
Okay.
What would your recommendation be, Louis?
I don't really have a strong recommendation either way. It really depends on when the districts want to see some of that money come back. We already have a already sizable surplus. So we could say, and I guess I would lean that way, is let's not pull too much of the ESSER 2 revenue, because something might come up next year that we would like to use it on. And so if we're already ending with a $7,500,000 surplus, which is pretty sizable, without having to pull that ESSER 2 indirects, let's wait till next year and pull it all next year, and it gives us sort of a buffer next year. Those funds allow us to decrease our assessment amount, so by having those funds in our budgets, it's allowing the local funds to be sort of have a little savings, and so it allows you to not have such an increase on your local budgets.
Okay, so that'll be on.
So I'll bring it up again at the next board meeting.
Sure.
And we can have another discussion and either make a decision or table it till July.
Sounds good.
How's our van management going?
It's going okay. They're relatively new, so they haven't really needed maintenance yet. The schools send me a mileage log, every quarter. The trucks have needed some work lately. We did purchase those used, one's 2013, one's a 2017. Both of them have been in the shop recently, new tires, new brakes. One of them had, I think, a suspension issue and a wheel bearing issue. We did have the extended warranty, so some of those things were covered, but the brakes and tires and stuff like that are not covered.
Are we working on a rotation program to keep our miles? Or?
I mean, they're still relatively low. I mean, we've only been using them now for less than a year, half a year, so. So they are stationed at the schools. At the end of the year, each one is stationed at a separate school. So at the end of the year, we can look at those miles and decide whether we want to send the blue one to this school and the white one to that school. One of them does have a is handicap accessible, so that one we don't have as much flexibility with as far as, I mean, wherever the handicap need is, that's where that one would stay, but the other two are similar. And as Bill talked about earlier, if we're moving forward with this program, he would be looking at purchasing a van for that program, because right now, currently, there's no special ed van stationed in the southern part of the SU. So that'll give us another van to do that mileage swap with.
Would that have to be a handicap van, or would that be?
He doesn't believe so, no, at this time.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Food service.
So food service, we started this process several months ago, back in January. We formed a committee which was made up of me, Tina, Jen.
Oh, wait, Louis, I'm sorry. I skipped right over Chris.
This will be real quick. So, this is basically, it's
I
gonna be a
just get in the
place.
groove with Louis. That's good news.
I interrupted the flow, so. This is basically a placeholder just until we actually move in, just to provide an update. As of right now, we're still on targets
Right.
for July 1 move-in date. I know that's, they're still doing demo work, working through there, so as you look through the window, doesn't look like progress been made, but we've been assured that we're on track. I know that's myself, Louis, and Greg are trying to schedule a meeting just around, just about, technology and phone and stuff like that, so, but it's just more just kind of keep posted where we're at, so.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good. All right, Louis.
No, okay. So we formed the committee. It was made of me, Tina, Jen McLemore, Kristen Calgieri, and Liz Colte. And we met a couple times during the process, one to look at the bid specifications and develop a scoring rubric on how we were going to score the bidders. And this was all, it's all part of a packet that we get from the state, and a lot of it is we can't change to be in federal compliance. The bids were due back at the end of March. We met and reviewed the bids and decided based on the similarity of all the bids that it was necessary for us to do site visits. So we went out and we visited 3 schools outside our SU that had other vendors, and we ate lunch, we toured the operations, talked to staff, so we can get a sense of how the other vendors operate and how pleased the other schools are with their choice of vendor. So in the packet, it actually went out today because I received approval from the state. After we've made a decision, done the whole scoring, we have to send it to the state for them to review and approve us moving forward before the board approves it. So at 2:36 this afternoon, I received approval from the state. I was hoping I didn't have to table it tonight. So in the packet is the letter from the state giving us the approval, as well as a copy of the scoring rubric and the bid summaries. The bid summaries only include the pricing, which is only one factor in the scoring, as you can see from the scoring rubric. So the scoring rubric takes into account many items such as pricing, meal qualities, options, programs.
Remind us who we have now, Louis.
The company we have now is currently Lexington.
Okay.
They've changed their name many times. It was formerly Aladdin, and then Fitzvogue. They're now going by the name of K-12.
Okay.
So in the pack that you have in front of you, you won't see an Aladdin or a Lexington, but you do see K-12, which is in essence the same company that we have now.
Okay.
So on the scoring rubric, it looks at staff wages that they're paying their staff, and a whole bunch of different items. But definitely pricing and meal quality are definitely 2 of the highest scoring factors. So based on the scoring and our site visits and our experiences that we had, as well as all of the stuff that we took from the packets, our recommendation is to move forward with the Abbey Group.
Which is who we had once before and everyone disliked.
So the the three vendors that bid on our program, those are the three main bidders in Vermont as well
Yeah.
as the Northeast.
What school did you go to for Abby? Is that
We went-
Rutland?
No, we went to Rutland Northeast, we went to Lothrop and Otter Valley.
And which school has Abby? Otter Valley?
Both of them do.
have Abby.
Yeah.
And Slate Valley also uses Abby Group. And then for cafe services, we went to Rutland Northwest, right, and that's what you went to.
Yes, and I have kids that are at Rutland City High School, so talked to them a little bit too. I didn't taste test, but I got their feedback.
So you tell me she got a free lunch?
Meredith?
We did get a free lunch, yes.
When you scored on the financial viability of the company, how were you measuring that?
We looked at the size of the company as far as total revenues. So there's definitely a size difference in the companies. K-12 is a national
So
company.
you have them as the lowest. They got a 3 out of 5 for financial strength and stability.
No, K-12 is the largest. That's the one. So they're a national company. They have the most points at 5. Abbey is the smallest company.
Right.
They got a
That's
3,
what I'm
yes.
saying.
So Abbey is a smaller local company. They're based at, I think, in New Hampshire.
So when you spoke to the people that have Abby, we had Abby before, and one of the biggest issues was having continuity with the staff, or just having staff, that they couldn't, I mean,
So-
we
Yeah.
wouldn't have staff sometimes.
I would say that they had the highest in their, they were giving raises this year
Yeah.
to their staff, whereas the other two were not. And we also spoke with staff, and they, you know, at least, all of the places were relatively okay with where they were, but Abbey Group seemed very happy, those staff workers,
Okay,
so.
because that was a problem
Yeah.
when we had them before.
We're
We have
having
that
that
issue
problem
now.
now. at
Yeah,
Rutland,
well,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's
We've
just
had-
an issue with that, but
Yeah.
we had a problem with, I don't know what they called, the regional manager, or whatever that person was, whatever their title was, that would come and meet, and I mean, we had times when you just didn't, nobody showed up, and we were being,
With our current provider, I mean, I think the rates have ranged between $13.50 to $15 an hour for the kitchen staff, which, based on those rates in the current environment, we know that that's an issue. I mean, when
And what is
Walmart
Abbey
and
at?
McDonald's are paying 17 and 18. In the bid that we received, K-12 and cafe services, the highest rate, other than the director, was, I think, $15 an hour, where with Abbey Group, it was a range between $15 to $17 an hour.
okay. And what is our, I don't know, recourse if they can't staff us? Because we signed these for like, what, 5 years?
Well, it's a one-year agreement. We
But you
can't go, we can renew it up to 4 times
Yeah.
for 1 year. We're actually not allowed to do more than 1-year agreement due to it's a federal regulation.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could, if we're not happy after 6 months and they're not meeting the terms of the contract, we can go back out to bid next year.
Yeah,
To look, we would have to go back out to bid. We couldn't just switch.
right.
There are some stipulations in the contract, like if they're not performing, you can, there's penalties that you can assess. But that's
Okay.
really our only recourse.
And are there any, have they toured our facilities? Because I know, like, that was the other piece when we switched. Like, we had to change, we had to have certain things because they had a particular expectation that you were going to have this or have that. So I'm just wondering, is there going to be an investment on top of just this?
There was a pre-proposal conference where all 3 vendors showed up and asked questions. There weren't a lot of questions. But
Okay.
then there was also a site visit where Abbey Group and Cafe Services, we went to all of the schools.
Okay.
And they were at each school about 10 minutes, where they just toured the kitchen, looked at the storage area, the equipment that was in the kitchen. They didn't really look at the meal serving, because they were just there to see what the kitchen looked like. They're familiar with with the program and how it works.
No, but that's my question, like, when we switched before, you needed to upgrade and have this, or, like, we redid our entire kitchen in Proctor. And even at the elementary school, we had to change and do some things because that was their expectations.
I'm sure with the new vendor, they'll have recommendations on equipment they may want to add, and if they want to do things, maybe they might want to do things differently. We've continued to invest in our food service programs for the last few years. We've been ending the years with a sizable surplus in food service, and those surplus do stay in the program. We don't take them out, and so we've been using that surplus each year to buy equipment on an as-needed basis. We bought a new stove in one of the schools. We bought a new refrigerator. I think this year will be no differently than last year. We'll look at what we have and what we need, and we'll reinvest a portion of that surplus to keep our kitchens updated and functioning properly.
Okay. And what's the, like, the prices that they have offered here? What's the differential between what currently? And I know, like, prices may be conversation, right? If we go through and...
So if you go to the, I think a better, rather than looking at prices, is to look at the bid summary sheet. So if you go find the one for Abbey Group. So for our reimbursable lunches, I'm sorry, this, so that sheet that you have in front of you doesn't have dollars. There is another sheet that has dollars. It is not a significant increase. I do know that, but I don't have the percentage.
I'm sorry, I'm just not well versed in what we're paying.
No, that's a good question. So, I can find it if there's any other questions, I could answer those.
I mean, as long as it's not like a 50% or,
No.
huge jump or something like that, so, okay. I mean,
It is a large increase in the lunch price,
Okay.
but a decrease in the breakfast price.
Okay. It does seem like a lot of money for what you get on your plate, but...
But if you look at K through 12, or cafe, well, K-12, the reimbursable lunch was even higher than what that is.
Are they going to, composting is not part of theirs, it's part of the schools, right?
Yeah, some
Okay.
schools do it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is required, but it's
amazing
a responsibility of the
what gets
school and the
composted.
custodians.
By the students, and how much they put on their plates and how it composts. So I'm grateful for composting. Very grateful.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
How long ago was it that Abby was your provider?
Well, how long have we had this group?
So,
We went out to bid with them when
we've been-
Deborah was still here, because they sent the
Yep.
binder to us.
So Rutland Southwest has been with the current vendor for the last more than 15 years, so since I've been the business manager. Rutland Central has had the current vendor for the last 5 years, plus the last 5 years before that, and so I guess it has been 10 years.
Oh, but
Unless it wasn't a full, it might not have been a full cycle.
we can't have had it, because we had Abbey Group when my daughter was in elementary school, and Rutland Town had Abbey Group when I taught up there.
They had
so-
Abbey Group before the current vendor, but they had the current vendor when we merged. So I don't know how long they had the current vendor before we merged.
Because when we merged, it was shortly after that, we had to go out for bid.
I think it was close to that time that we
And they
switched to
sent
Rutland
us
Town.
those huge binders from, because one of them was at Castleton or something at the time. It was called Cafe or something, I thought. Because I remember sitting in West Rutland Library and looking at those books.
I was just wondering how long ago was these issues existed?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just a continuum, just with that service, no matter what the company is, but I know we had complaints about the quality of food, the amount of food, the temperature of the food, the fact we didn't have people show up to serve and make the food. So, and I know we had Abbey Group because they wore the little green shirts. I remember them clearly. So we didn't have them we can't have had them that long, for 10 years, so.
So I strongly believe you're gonna have issues with whichever vendor you go.
Oh, I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that. I'm sure.
So-
It's the nature of the business, I'm sure.
So I know some on the committee who wanted to see a change.
Yeah. It seems like that just is kind of what keeps them honest. It was the same thing when we did it before. It was the same complaints, and there were people who thought the same thing about when we picked this group.
Yeah, so when does Uber Eats or DoorDash become better viable?
Yeah.
I figure Panera would put in a bid.
So, funny observation, I mean, when we were at Otter Valley, when we walked in, there was, whether it was Uber Eats or Grubhub or whatever, there was all sorts of bags that were being delivered to the school.
Oh, really?
Students, I
We had
think.
given them an idea.
Wow. And that's kind of the middle of nowhere. All right, so are you looking, we don't want to encourage that. Are you looking for a motion from us to accept Abbey Group?
Yes, I am.
So moved.
Motion by Linda to accept Abbey Group for, with a one-year contract with the ability to renew. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
They keep us happy by sending us samples every once in a while.
Yeah.
And just for reference, so the lunch price currently is $3.94, and the breakfast price is $3.20.
$3.94 and $3.20. Oh. So one went up about $1. Okay. All right, we already heard from Bill, so transportation, who's doing that?
I thought there was questions that were,
Oh,
did you want me just, I believe there was a board member that had questions
Oh,
about it.
yeah,
Is that what's on
Eric.
the agenda?
Yeah, I had brought it up at our previous meeting, just to inquire about our transportation contract going out to bid for, I think, when, like, I guess time-wise, when that's gonna happen, and the reason why is just simply because, if we look at bids and contracts after we approve a budget, I think it would be, more fiscally responsible to do that before we start developing budgets. So that's essentially why I wanted it to for a discussion.
So next year is our last year in our current contract. At that point, we have the decision whether we want to work with our current vendor to increase our current contract, or to renew our current contract, based on CPI increases or less, or go back out to bid. Based on the lack of other competitive or qualified vendors in the area, it may be more advantageous for us not to go back out to bid, to just work with our current vendor and see what we can do on that.
are there actually other vendors in the area?
There used to be a vendor called First Student. I don't know if they're still in the area or not. The last time we went out to bid, we did not get any other bids.
Yeah, that's what.
So
Okay.
by going back out to bid, we open ourselves up to an increase larger than the CPI increase. We've both issues have had Betcha for a very long time, and the only reason we went back out to bid after we merged was because the vendor was saying that we had to, because the prices had risen so high over the course of the time that our contract was behind as far as what it costs to actually maintain the routes and the vehicles, and they weren't willing to continue servicing us if we didn't go back out to bid, so that they can do an increase that was larger than the CPI increase.
Okay, so we don't have to go out to bid, and what do you anticipate that it's gonna increase dramatically? Or?
I would not anticipate it would, I mean, as far as, our current contract has a thing in it for fuel increases, so we pay a fuel mitigation fee if the fuel price is higher than, I believe it's $2.85, which it has been, when we first went out to bid. When we first went out to bid, the fuel prices were low. So the main increases has been in wages. So I don't really know for sure, but I would say come the fall, we will start discussions with our current vendor and see what they're thinking, and during the budget process, we'll have those discussions based on the feedback that we get from them.
Okay.
And the only other option would be to bring transportation in-house and purchase our own buses, hire our own bus drivers.
I don't think that was a recommendation 4 or 5 years ago, I saw that. No, I think that would be, appropriate thing to do. And I didn't realize that, I know you had talked before about, that it was going to expire, and I thought that we would have to go back out to bid. I didn't know that you could work with the vendors.
Okay, thank you. Proficiency-based grading. Tina.
I wanted to have a discussion at the board level to kind of just look at proficiency-based grading again. One of our policies, which I think is still part of our policy binder, but needs to be reviewed, is on proficiency-based grading. And it basically says that we are looking for all students to reach proficiency. I believe that we label proficiency as a grade of 3 or a 2.8 or something like that. And if a student's not reaching proficiency at this point, unless they are way below proficiency, they still get passed on to the next level. So I think that we should look at the vernacular of our system, whereas proficiency is maybe either a different number or defined differently. And how to do that, I don't know. I think that our current system also doesn't help motivate students or with self-motivation, because if they, are above a 1.5, they still get passed on to the next level. They are not expected necessarily to attend summer school or get any extra help, and we want our kids to be closer to 3. So if there's no consequence to them not being close to where we think they should be proficient, they're not getting there, and we're just pushing them on and on and on. Whereas I think we're thinking of our system, and we've talked about grade equivalents to an old system with A, B, C, D before. We're thinking a bit more of that system, but we're calling proficiency at this 3, which we're saying is closer to a B, but there's still kids that aren't going to reach B. But our plan is to get all students to reach a B. And that isn't, I don't think, realistic. Plus, I think if there's a different way to look at the system, then bringing kids to be more motivated about their success would be helpful as well.
So in Quarry Valley, we have made some changes because we did realize that there were some inconsistencies, and suddenly you could, I don't know, be graduating a bunch of salutatorian kind of people that shouldn't be with that tag along beside their name, because the grading scale is askew. So maybe, I don't know if Lisa sat and worked with Quarry Valley principals or Chris, if you want to.
I can start, and Lisa.
Yeah.
So I think, the discussion that was born out of Quarry Valley, because as we looked at, graduation, particularly as kids start to look at, colleges or, next steps, we did find that the way that, as Tina had said, proficiency are being defined, in order for a student to be proficient would be at a 3. And as we tried to convert that over to a traditional 4-point scale, a student who was doing 3, which is proficient or passing, was really getting the equivalent to, say, a B or a 3.0, which was really creating we were inflating grades is what we were really doing. And in a sense, giving some students an overinflated sense of self in terms of preparedness. And what we had discussed or talked about, with Lisa, with the admins, was in fact looking to lower that proficiency. And that's not to say lower in standard or what that may look like, but would place that more appropriately where it be, let's say, a 1.5 or a 2, which, as you look at a traditional 4-point, would be equivalent to, say, a D or a passing grade, which is proficient. And so therefore students who are doing just enough to be proficient or getting by would have as you convert that grade, would be the grade would reflect that. And so therefore then students who were pushing themselves a little bit more and were working a little bit harder then would have a grade that was reflective of that. So you would have this idea that not all 30 kids or 20 kids walking across the stage all had 3.0s, or like you said, we're qualified, that you really would have this more appropriate representation of where students are at academically. And so while students still would be would pass and would be allowed to graduate, but you also had other individuals who would in a sense be rewarded, would be be incentivized for working a little bit harder and for getting that that 3.0 or that 3.5 and being a little bit more. And so that was that discussion. I know that other SUs and districts have looked at this and have made this shift, and so that was what we were looking to do. And I think to me, it would make sense across the SU to look at a similar shift. But at least I know at that point I'll turn it over to you to know that you work closely with this. As you did the conversion scale and had a lot of discussions with this over the past year and a half or so.
Chris, I think you gave a really great summary. I think the concerns around how scores can motivate students or not motivate students in their learning journey, and also the right place to put cutoff points for grades when we're using them to create a GPA have been things that we've had lengthy discussions about in the past. And our conversion scales has been in place for a while now, and we've been really sort of focused on pandemic stuff and not this. So I think it's a great time to revisit the conversation, look at what we've learned from this process, and how we and what other schools across the state have learned and to share about this process, so we can think about if we want to make some adjustments at this point.
Is there much data on like what schools across the state do? But I guess at the high school level, you're competing with kids across the country, right? So
Correct.
So that'd be interesting without making this a 5-year project. But I wonder what kind of data you can accumulate on.
We looked at a lot of the national work in they call it competency-based education instead of proficiency-based education. That's a much more common term across our country. Mm-hmm. And we spent a lot of time looking at that, and there are some organizations that are specifically focused on doing comparisons across the country and looking at grading scales and different work related to competency-based or proficiency-based education. So there's some really good resources out there.
I can speak toward the policy part of it too, if you want. I know we looked at it back in August, and there is a revised model policy for it. There's been statute changes around proficiency-based grading, so basically it was left off where the committee was going to seek clarification from the assistant superintendent and superintendent on we had the procedural language in our current policy and in that policy. So it doesn't look the same. It reads different, if I remember correctly. So
And then just for clarification, I mean, there was always this level of confusion when we switched over that we had to do away with, A through F. First we had to have numbers, then we had to have letters that equated to other words, and then we had, instead of having whole numbers, then we could have numbers with a decimal, and so, I mean, I remember looking at my daughter's transcript, and it was quite the mess, because of all the changes that the AOE and even our SU thought were best to go through based on prior leadership. Are we currently required to stay with, 4-3-2-1?
We are currently required to report out on students' proficiency against the standards. And the AOE has some specific language about that in the ed quality standards and some other documents, but it's not, there's no prescribed scale or system for doing that. The intent of it is that students and families will get feedback related to specific standards, which our jump rope platform currently allows us to assess students against the standard and tag the standard or indicator for every assignment, and is fairly customizable in what codes we use to report that out.
I think another confusing part of it is that, particularly in the younger grades, I think the way it's graded is if it hasn't been taught yet, then that student is still a 2 or still approaching proficiency. So for 2/3 of the year, they may be a 2. So these kids, as they get older, they're seeing, oh, I have 2s. I'm okay. I'm good. So then when they get into the older grades, they're fine with 2s. I feel like there has to be some different way of looking at it so that kids want to achieve the highest at all the time.
Well, Tina, I understand what you're saying, but I think in my year 30 education, I think you're always going to have that, whether it be a C or a 70 or an 80. There are some students who, regardless of what that number, that letter is, are going to be like, I'm perfectly fine with just that. And I think that's the big question is, how do we motivate other individuals to kind of move forward? I think where that was part of the discussion that we've had is that there are students who said, hey, if I get a 3, I do just enough to get that 3, I'm getting a 3.0, I'm getting a B, and that's a win-win on all levels for me. I'm doing minimal effort, get maximum reward to a certain extent. And so we want to look at making that adjustment, because I think no matter what we do, you're always going to have that situation where students, it's a classic parent-student battle, like, you should be satisfied with B, you should be satisfied with C, and some kids like, hey, I'm fine with the C, I'm good with that. Other kids are going to be pushing hard through there. So I think that's just, there's another whole discussion around grading, but I think our discussion really was around that when you converted that to a 3.0, the discussion was in high school that these students were then having like a 3.0 GPA, when really, as you talk about comparatively speaking, look at other members of a cohort, a graduating class, that 3.0 was not the same. In terms of the level of rigor that someone, say, at a larger school or more competitive school, that 3.0 was much more difficult to come by as opposed to a 3.0 in one of our schools currently. So,
but I do think there is something to be said that when we switched over to all these crazy, the numbers, the new letters, whatever we want it to be, there became this level of complacency, because in schools the message became, once you reach this, you're good. And I think that when we had, and I've said in plenty of these meetings with prior leadership and heard how archaic ABC was, but you didn't have that same kind of behavior with kids. And there's also this, the weirdness about that if you're a C student, you're not a good student. And there's a hell of a lot of good C students that have gone out there and been really successful in the world. And I've always kind of found it odd that, we decided that, you really needed to be a B student to move on, to be successful, and that's what your level of proficiency is, that you're a B student. I mean, there was no data behind that. The AOE didn't have any reason behind that. It was just kind of like, oh, that's like a nice number. We want everyone to be a B student. And we have created this, sense of, I don't know, smarter than we are kind of mentality. And we see kids that probably shouldn't be going on to school, probably should be doing other things because they have this overinflated idea of who they are. And the reality is, I know the prior leadership said all colleges are switching to this, but I just saw grades and they're still all A, B, and C coming from the college. So I think I've never been in favor of this. I spoke out against it prior. Every time we decided to switch numbers, letters, or whatever it was that was going to make us smarter, none of that's going to change the smartness or how students learn. So, Colin?
It's a difficult conversation for me, given that inside the supervisory union we have K through 12, where I'm coming from Rutland Town, where we're K to 8, and unless there's an issue with how we're tracking kids into high school, and if truly someone's getting a 4 and they're getting placed in advanced math classes where they shouldn't be as a freshman, I don't see it as an issue. I think to Chris's point, kids, everyone's always. Some kids are motivated to do the best in sports, do the best in class. Other kids are motivated to, what gets me out of here?
Yep.
And there's only so much grades aren't going to change that. It's how much enthusiasm we can give them. So for me in this discussion, there's been numerous studies across the country. It depends on where you are and what works. Pass, fail, layers of proficiency, and then you can look into the greatest public school districts in the country and they're using pass fails, and you can look at the worst and they're using different metrics. I think unless we have something inherently broken, it's a huge can of worms to open that ultimately we have a lot more things to be focused on. That's my opinion.
So I think something is broken if we are giving students an overinflated idea of where they are in the world and sending them out to the world, particularly high school students, that you're really probably at a 2.5 or a 2.3, but they're being bumped up to a 3 so they can pass on as proficient. I think that is a pretty broken system, in my opinion.
From a parent's perspective, I 100% agree. I think at the elementary school level, I think it has a minimal impact. At the high school level, there's work that needs to be done.
And Colin, I understand that's where the discussion really is born out of the core out of the high school. That's where the discussion began, was around this. It was not an elementary decision or discussion. It was at the high school level.
I feel when...
Yeah, and you gotta look at, resources too, and size of schools. Take Seattle public schools, for instance. C students coming out of there are tracking towards top public education colleges. The recruiters are looking at those schools and the resources they have and the metrics of the kids they're going up against. We're in very small communities. I think the conversation of grading, it's not as effective in a 20 class school. And I don't think we're overinflating kids. Again, we can be pouring more resources and efforts into helping these kids be motivated to learn than just a piece of paper, a grade. But again, that's just me.
I had a couple of kids go through high school, and we could see in their class students that would take certain classes to achieve valedictorian status versus kids who are taking much more rigorous classes that may not have been able to perform to get the same number to become a salutatorian. I can remember discussions at home if the wrong grades came home, the wrong A, B, C, D, or F, whatever came along. there was a recognition there that either you weren't doing your job or something. There was something that needed to be adjusted there, usually to me. Some kids are motivated. They're just self-motivated, so they'll strive for that 110%, whatever. Other kids can be motivated if they see a reason to be, and then others will just do whatever to get through. So I think having sent a couple kids out into college, that I agree that what their grade may show on paper may not necessarily reflect their capacity to perform in a college setting. And I think we do a disservice to kids if we're trying to prepare them to go out into the world, whether it be college, vocational, whatever it may be, but to have a false sense of, I'm at this level, so everybody else must be at the same level, and they're not able to perform at that level, I think we're doing a big disservice.
So as we said prior, Corey Valley, we are making some changes at the high school level to try and address this. I'm not sure then, is that something when we're done with that, we want to look at the elementary schools or how? I mean, it's really been principal driven, and then working with Lisa, kind of re-examining and looking at that.
Well, I think we have to look at where we're putting the proficiencies as it is, because right now it's at a 3 or a 2.8 or whatever it is, and we're aiming for all kids to get there, and a good part of the kids are not getting there. So I think we have to look at what proficiency really means, and maybe maybe you and Lisa could form an admin committee or a review of it or something and look at that.
Or, I mean, maybe Lisa could bring back the Corey Valley just once we have that all kind of, even though that's going to be more on the high school level, just to see like how it moved, how it started, and then how it moved to kind of address what we see in.
I think over time things have changed, and I think when it first started, teachers thought, a lot of teachers weren't giving opportunities for 4s. They thought, 3 is, what we're aiming for, and if you're not hitting a 3, you're not meeting proficiency. They may, some teachers were saying, well, we're not going to meet this until quarter 3, so you're 2s until then, and that's fine. But then the kids get used to 2s, and they're like, well, I'm close to where I was. Why work harder? It's just the whole system. I don't. There's just something not. At least in the middle school ages, I feel like the elementary, when they added the benchmarking part of the reports, it was much easier to tell if your child was on target or not. When it first came out, it was very confusing with all the MPs and APs and whatever you want to call it. But I feel like I know what you're saying, Chris, that there's going to be students that are C students, B students, and A students. I feel like this system is making a larger portion of C students than there truly should be.
Well, and I think it goes back to, it's not necessarily, and I want to be careful about it, in A, B, C, because I think there are, I think Colin talked about this, about the C student, and having worked in a high-performing school in Chicago and having, a lot of friends still there, I don't know if a lot of elite universities are really recruiting C students, but I think it's, but at the same time is, there are many students who have worked very hard to get a C. And I think and so you also look at the work ethic that someone puts forth into achieving something, and so sometimes that work ethic is transferable to success later on in life, not necessarily that letter grade. I've known individuals who've cruised to a grade and don't really have the strongest work ethic, while others have worked very hard, they buckle down, and just despite whatever it is, they come away with a C, or but they're highly successful in life because they have a strong sense of self, they're driven, they have it's a great work ethic. So it's not necessarily, but I think what we've seen and this is go back to the discussion with Corey Valley Evans, is that A lot of our students are doing, you know, the strong work ethic is not there for a lot of our students, that they're doing minimal to get to some of these points. And then as we are looking at we don't necessarily do this with our fourth grader or fifth graders, but in high school as we're converting, you know, our scores to a GPA for a variety of purposes, there is that disconnect in terms of, you know, really what that converted grade means as opposed to what the effort that was put in, if that makes sense.
I think the disconnect came when we switched, and the message came out that this is where you needed to be. You never went to school before, and teachers didn't say, well, as long as you had like a B-, you're gonna be good. That wasn't like the conversation. It was like you were gonna go and you were gonna work, and if you didn't do well, or you got a C or something, you were gonna come and see the teacher or whatever. But when we switched to proficiency based, it was even in all of the literature. It was very clear that once you hit that benchmark, you had become proficient. And that was the message we gave to parents, we gave to students, and we gave to our community. And we heard that time and time again from administration, from all kinds of people. And kids would say that. Why do I have to do this? You've already told me once I'm here, I've already crossed the threshold. That's where I need to be. Did some students go on to do more? Of course. I mean, there are classes that are just super competitive, and then there are kids, you know, that aren't. But that conversation, I don't remember ever having that conversation in the dark ages when I was in school about, well, you go into a class and they go, if you get a C+ or a B-, we're going to consider you good to go. I mean, the expectation you were going to work and, you know, but I don't know. So what is...
We're basically putting the ceiling here instead of letting it be limitless. Because we're saying you get to the green, you're good. But there's a lot more room for the green to grow.
I think it's also confusing because that threshold of what's passing varies school by school, and Stafford might have one number for passing versus Pulteney or Fairhaven, and I'm surprised there's not general uniformity locally for what is like a passing grade.
Yeah, and this is it is a known phenomenon that occurs in schools overall, where, you know, they talk about, you know, testing complacency, where if a school just gets to, say, like, if there's that 70% threshold, they're off the state's radar, they're doing just fine, and they can kind of cruise, and so they're doing enough to be considered a good school, but then they're just coasting, and he said that's where that ceiling's at. And I think that's where the discussion was around Corey Valley admins, was how do we continue to raise standards. And, you know, and like I said, it is, you know, user driven, you know, that's regardless of what, you know, we're going to do, or you're still going to have individuals who that malaise will set in with some students, and, you know, some kids will be more motivated than others, and that's just how it is, you know, whatever career path they choose. But I think that the discussion is going back to, you know, full circle, that Corey Valley was based upon the Evans saw this disconnect in terms of when the conversion was made, it didn't really accurately reflect, I think, you know, what they felt was the academics of you know, that group overall. So.
I could have sworn about 4 years ago, we had a similar conversation.
Probably. We probably.
And, you know, I know like some districts in the state were trying to, you know, take the proficiency-based grading system and then find ways to incorporate it into an ABCD system. And I don't know, you know, how far that went, but I think, you know, from what Lisa was saying, that we're, you know, there's requirements to have this in place, and there's, you know,
to have something called that. I think when Matt was here, that was his thing.
Exactly.
You know, you can label it that. How you define it under that label belongs to you. And Deborah and Adam were pretty clear about how they thought that should be defined under the label. And we went round and round about that. So
it would seem to me that, you know, we've talked in the past about the impact that middle school has and the importance of that sort of change between elementary going into middle school, that we would have the same system, expectation, grading, all that in the middle school, so as they come up to the high school, they're already involved in that, rather than it sort of being an abrupt change.
And I understand, I think in other states I've worked at, you've seen proficiency-based grading at the elementary grade levels, where you have a narrative report card, and it's not grade-based or, letter grade-based, it's more just in terms of progress. But as you get older and move through, like to the middle school or high school, then it slowly shifts to something differently. And that's traditionally what occurs, like I said. So having worked in the suburbs of Chicago for many, many years in highly competitive schools and school districts, that you had that proficiency-based narrative report card in the elementary, but then as you move through it, I think that's, regardless of, where we're at, I think, they said that this was a discussion, Corey Valabans, about can we, we're not shifting away, but it was really just kind of just redefining that proficiency, where that.
Well, the scale,
right.
redefining the scale.
Yeah, so like if proficiency's more in the middle, maybe there's approaching proficiency, above proficiency, exceed, like highest, something like that. Because if they hit proficiency and they feel like they're done and they've achieved their goal, but they really have a lot more that they could be doing, it decreases their motivation.
Well, and I don't know if they even understand sometimes that when they got an A, B, C, and D, they knew it. This has been an educational piece for them because, and it all depends on the grade level that you're talking to. Elementary school kids, we've had A, B, C, D, and E, and F for such a long time. They got it. They had brothers and sisters that told them. Their parents told them. When we went to this thing, they didn't understand it. They still don't understand it. They really don't get the whole idea of it because, so when you said you hit the 2, they go, okay, that I get. Okay, that's the only thing I'm supposed to get then, because it doesn't make sense to them. They really don't understand getting a 2 because they used to get an A, B, C, and D. They got that, they knew what it was, and they also knew numbers. If you got a 65, you knew 100 was the goal to reach, and a 65 did not look good. So it is a matter of how we educated.
What's the passing grade?
Yeah.
Is a problem with the proficiency? Honestly, each kid's got a different goal in life, and they have a different goal to get to. And if our goal is to graduate every kid, proficiency is very much a great goal. And for someone to hit proficiency is a success. Not every person is going to say, hey, I'm proficient, I want to be the best. And I'm not certainly going to be the best in every subject. So, and to break it down, when I went to kindergarten, I didn't know what A, B, C, D, or E was, and it could have been 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to teach to the standard, and every kid should be hitting that standard. Whether they choose to go forward or not, we'd love for them to do that. Their family needs to make that decision. We need to give the narrative to each family, and like, your child is proficient at 2, but 4 is the best scale to be on. We need to get them there, but certainly to do our jobs, getting them to 2 is pretty good. And unless you're telling me we're giving kids 2s that are 1s, there's got to be some standard of what's the proficiency of a 3rd grader.
Well, Colin, I think you're 100% correct. I agree with you with that, the 2, and I think regardless of whether it be, the 100 or the A or the 2, you've hit upon something which we continually fight in education is calibration, because what a 2 looks like in my classroom might be much different in your classroom and in somebody else's classroom. So to get a 2 in my classroom, and I see this in high schools all the time, kids I don't want to be in George's class because I can't. It's impossible to get a 2 in George's class. I'll take Linda's class. It's a breeze. Just bring her a cookie on Friday and get a 2. And,
a clementine.
And I think that's one of the things that we continually battle against and work with our teachers is how do we, really look at, and normally not what that 2 is, what that looks like in all of our classrooms, or, like I said, it's a C or a B or a 90 or 80, whatever it may be, that regardless of what that number is, we still have to make sure that that standard is there. And I've had this discussion with teachers when I was at Proctor, they're saying, well, these kids just start, they're doing bare minimum to go to 3. I'm like, well, just raise the level of what it takes to get to 3. I mean, you can adjust that, but, I think that the concern was just, like I said, around that conversion, but proficiency still is a good thing. Getting there, it's something to be, commended, but it's but what that is, it said is, would be a 1.5 or a 2, it's fine, but we still have an opportunity then for kids to kind of push forward and, with their exceeds. And I think Rutland City has, similar to what, Tina was saying, where you have like the 1.5, 2, 3, and 4, where, you have, 4 is like exceeds proficiency or whatever it may be. But you're right, it is semantics, but I think really we look at it is in terms of not lowering the bar at all, but it's just, continuing to just raise the standard, for our students.
Well, there's that. And I think also when we decided not to weight classes anymore, when we had AP courses and like that, and we decided it wasn't fair, we weren't going to weight those courses anymore, I think that also took away from students also, so.
Well, I think there's an issue, I think, Lewis can attest this in terms of students who even go to take a, early college or dual enrollment.
Sure.
Sometimes there's no real incentive because, in fact, if anything, from a, I don't know if you would.
Yeah, so the colleges give a number grade, but we have to convert it to our scale first, and conversion, they actually lose points. So you may have a 4.0. I've seen cases where you have a 4.0 from the school, and then when they convert that, it actually turned into a 3.5.
From the college to the high school, you mean?
So I showed examples of that to Lisa.
Well, that's like saying 12 inches here is 14 inches someplace else.
Yeah.
Why? I guess that's where we're struggling with this. That
those are two different conversations, though. A kid who's focused on GPA for college is a way different story than saying a C is not motivating someone to learn more.
No, because if my kid can go and do college on campus their senior year, and they finish that year with a 4.0, but they come back and on their transcript, it says that they have a 3.95 because the conversion is off. I don't think that's a big deal. That's a hell of a big deal.
3.5, not even 3.95.
Yeah.
3.5.
Wow.
3.5. That's a big deal, Colin. I would disagree.
And
Where do they take the class?
What?
I mean, there's a whole variation of where they take the college credit. Not every college credit's the same. I mean,
Well, if you're taking early college to
we started
Castleton,
with motivation, a kid to go above and beyond proficiency.
Well, that's what kids are
Now we're
doing.
talking about getting them into college and a good college, and then what classes they're taking.
Juniors and seniors can take 2 classes of dual enrollment. Seniors can also do a year, their senior year, college on campus. We're talking about kids that are in our schools that are seniors. A kid that went and took that, had a 4.0 from the college, and when they came back with that to put on their high school transcript as their senior year, that number calibrated to a 3.5.
so when they applied to colleges to go to college,
again,
their transcript was showing a 3.5 on that class rather than the 4.0.
So that's a problem with calibration with this. And it's impacting kids that are going above and beyond.
But they're getting the 4 credits for college, and the college counselor is going to read that they have 4 credits and in a 4.0 in a calc or whatever class they took.
It's impacting your GPA, and which you well know that's all some scholarships look at. So, and there's a level of competitiveness. So, and why should your transcript say you had a 3.5 when you actually had a 4.0?
So I go back to, I really think there are 2 levels. I think there's the secondary discussion around,
Sure.
I think there's elementary discussion around this, because I think there are I think it is complex. And that's why I said, that's why a lot of states, as you move into these secondary grades, do not have proficiency-based grading. They move back into more traditional based because of a variety of scenarios in terms of pathways and things along those lines. So I think, to really look at what's good for, say, a junior is going to be the same for first and second grade, I think I think it's irresponsible. I think we really would have to take a look. I know when I spoke to Lisa today, I think we really, we're necessarily prepared to have a full-length discussion or make a recommendation. I think it was more just in terms of, there are some issues, there are some concerns. I think, there could be people who are on both sides of this, and I think regardless of what grading, and they said that 3 different states, 30 years, and there's always been discussions around grading and what it means, and that's, I think you're always going to have that. But I think we really, the board had asked to explore this or to discuss this, because there are some concerns, and I think that's. But I think whatever.
So maybe.
Next step,
so maybe when we finalize in Corey Valley, Lisa could bring back for this board, just to kind of see where we started and where we've moved, just to see how we've done it on the secondary level, right? And then
Would that include middle school, 7th and up?
Are you looking at middle school, or are you just looking at high school? Because a lot of our middle schools are in our high schools.
Right,
so.
right now, I believe that the discussion was
just high
for 9th grade.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Because I would love to also have you look at middle school.
But why don't we let them finalize this, bring this back as a comparison of where we started when this first came, and where those principals, along with Lisa, have decided based on data, based on, parents, based on a lot of, information, where they chose to move that. And then maybe the next grouping we look at are 7th and 8th graders.
So can we get a report next month? Is that too soon, or?
I don't know, Lisa, where?
I don't know either. I didn't talk to them about it the last time I met with them, but I'm meeting with the principals on Thursday, so I could ask them on Thursday.
Okay.
Where we need to go next with that.
Or even if you could just bring the draft where you're at to date with that, to kind of show where it's moving.
Or a verbal history, just a real short verbal history.
I think if you have the visual, the way it's set up, it's something you really need a visual for, the way it's broken down. Even when you saw the conversion card.
We can give history through the visual.
Yeah.
Okay. Next month.
Yeah.
Okay, does that work?
I'd like to put on next month's agenda.
Okay, so.
Also, I mean, I don't know how much, resources and time this would take, but, maybe this is something that, we can look into, after the, the rollout of the strategic plan.
Yeah.
Too, and.
Our hope is, in Corey Valley, that we're going to have something in place to start.
By September.
Hey, Lisa, is that a lot to ask of you at this point? I'm always cognizant of people and where they are and how, this is what we want, but is that realistic? Do you need it maybe in July? Or, is that realistic? Should we, I don't want to overwhelm you or the principals at this point, if you could do that. I think we should at least ask you, is that something okay with you?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I think what Lisa's asking for, I think I have a very good image in mind of.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
And what's next. And I don't think that's a big ask. Revising the SU-wide system.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
That would be a lot for a month.
Okay. But I just want to make sure you're okay with, because I know there's a lot going on.
Okay.
So thank you.
So Lisa will bring kind of what we have already done in Corey Valley, just as a rough look at, okay?
It's just numbers. Give it to Lewis. He can do it.
Yeah. So, that must have driven you nuts with the numbers, Lewis. All right, moving on for policy. We have 4 policies for second read. So the policy is F1, student conduct and discipline. F5, student alcohol and drugs. G5, selection of instructional materials. And H2, community use of school facilities. A motion would be in order to approve those policies as presented. Discussion.
I just have one question on the use of facilities, where the 3 different entities do have a form to be filled out. And I'm assuming on there, there's liability insurance.
Yeah, so what we're saying, that's what we're saying is required, yes.
Okay. Is there an amount of insurance that's required, or?
I think it goes through procedures, right?
Yeah, I'm talking with Chris Leopold, he said we could look at setting a threshold based on the impact or the level of activity. So that's something we look at in the procedural piece for that.
So if it's a knitting group, it may be one thing. If it's a BMX group, it may be something different.
Correct, yes.
We also talked about that being on the building use form itself as a potential option too.
So we're doing that, we're creating the form to have different groups based on use.
I think the question that was asked for us was to, as we were providing insurance, what is that appropriate level of insurance needed for that activity? So, and that's, I'm meeting with Chris tomorrow or Thursday to discuss this and a couple other items, so.
It's important we have Chris's input because he would have to defend us if we messed up. So it's important to take what he has
Right,
to
I think,
say.
yeah, so.
Okay, I would just hate to have gone through all of this and all of these discussions, and now we're at, $100 or something. I'll be rather disappointed if that's,
Oh, no,
How
no,
this-
it's going to be a lot more than that.
well, I know, most places it's $1 million. That's just what it is. I mean, that's where it is for municipalities if you are renting a space, that's just what it is. And we have Boy Scouts, all those places all come with insurance. If you have an actual organization, most places come with insurance like that if you're gonna rent something. So I just think that when you get into, this versus this, that's when it starts to create inequities, but that's.
Well, it's the facility itself that's at question here. Using a general purpose room, if they damaged it, what would we expect in the way of a minimum amount of insurance?
But you could also have a kid that's backed over, that her parent or grandparent was at a knitting club, and I have an issue with somebody who was at a BMX thing. So the potential can be catastrophic no matter what the activity is, and that's what we have to be careful of.
To me, that would fall under security deposit, not the liability insurance. Well,
Damage the facility.
I know.
Security
I mean, I
deposit is
rent
gonna
out
cover
a
that.
facility on a regular basis, and you have security deposit, you have insurance, so, but.
But it is being looked at on the forms.
It is what that language would look like, whether it be just a statement that we made around appropriate insurance, or whether Chris believes a different level, so something we're taking.
But that won't impact the policy itself.
Because everyone will still, according to this, will be required to provide appropriate insurance for use.
Louis?
I think the common policies have, usually $1 million. Well, from what I've seen, because we get a lot of them, is $1 million. Is the typical policy. And then I think those organizations that have a more higher risk type program usually have higher policies on their own, just because they know their program is a higher risk.
And I don't think those are the programs or the issues you're going to have a problem with as the discussion revolved around. It's going to be smaller kind of programs, people that want to use the building, so, which was the basis of the conversation.
I understand that. I think in 3 years, we've not had anyone use the building for like a birthday party or,
Well, but for some of us, we were mind blown to think that you would do that in a school building.
But I'd say just,
Yeah.
Right, I think, Chris Leopold will make sure that we are covered.
Yeah,
He suggests, I trust that.
Sure.
Our lawyer will make sure that we are.
Absolutely.
So I'll defer to him.
Can I make some comments on other policies? On the first one, F1, just in the first paragraph, there were some commas missing, some extra ands in there, and one of the ands should be, or one extra and one of the ands should be moved to an R, like A-R-E.
So do you have that on your paper?
I do, so I can pass that to
Eric.
Eric.
Do any of the comments change the essence of the policy?
Nothing
Okay.
at all. And
So-
then on F5, I had a question about who, on the last part, it says, "The district shall have a cooperative agreement with at least one provider approved by the Department of Health that will provide substance abuse treatment to students who are referred through the school's support and referral system or who refer themselves for treatment." I was just curious who ours was. If we must have one, who do we have right now?
I do believe it's Rutland Medical Center.
It's a hospital?
Yeah.
So there's not a provider? It's like
I'll
a,
double check that, but I do believe that's who.
I believe that is
So-
Rutland Occupational Health.
okay.
Yeah.
And then the last one, just on G5, again, it doesn't change the essence at all. Just to make it even, either I would add a space after that each school shall enable students to engage annually in rigorous, relevant, and comprehensive learning opportunities, or I would delete the space above A under the first paragraph from implementation. Either way, just to, I would probably add the space after the second part of implementation before A,
Okay. So.
just to make it even.
If there's no objection to Tina sharing her changes or updates with Eric. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those pass. And we have one policy for first read, A1, role and adoption of school board. A motion would be in order to approve the policy to send on to member district boards as presented.
Where is that one in our,
It's the last one, A1.
because I have 4, but not 5.
Oh,
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
On the computer, they don't necessarily come in the same order that we get them here.
oh. Okay, well, I think I looped them together because they were second read and first read,
Right.
so.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Discussion?
I had just a question.
Yep.
Under policy adoption, where it says suggest revisions to, what happens then? Because I don't feel like this is going to stop that circle. So I was just curious if it would, what the options really are.
Wait, where are you? Say it again.
Under policy adoption, where
Yeah.
the red part, suggest revisions to. So so once the SU says, go out to the local boards, it says that you can adopt or suggest revisions to developed by the SU board. So how is that going to stop this loop?
Well, that's a first read. It's going to come back for, this policy will come back because it's only a first read.
No, I know, but we're having a discussion about the policy in the SU right now. So that's why I was asking that question. If for every other policy, so say we're giving all those second reads to the local boards as second reads.
Right,
Right, well,
which have already gone as a first
Right,
read. So there
right.
should be
So
no
say the ones
changes.
from next month, the first reads from next month.
Yep,
We all approve them,
yep,
and then they go to the local boards.
Yep.
And let's say Rutland Town says, I don't like this and this on this policy, and the board says, send it back. Because that's what this says to do, suggest revisions to.
send it back to who? The policy
It says to
committee?
send it, so it says, under policy adoption,
Yeah.
after consideration of the comments and information provided by interested individuals, the adopting board may adopt or suggest revisions to a policy developed by the SU board. So what happens when they suggest revisions? Does it go back to the policy committee? Does it just get revised within the local board and just, that's the Rutland Town version of it?
No, we already talked about that.
No,
We're
I
not-
know.
We're
So,
not doing that.
so
We're not
what
starting
happens?
those
So
kind
then we
of
shouldn't have that
It
here.
should state in the policy, you're saying.
Yes.
How it
This
ends.
this isn't telling us how it
doesn't tell you
ends.
how it ends.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
It's just saying, you can suggest revisions again and send it back. So that's what it's telling us to do, and that's what we want to stop.
Right.
So we either have to agree that local boards have some say on the policies if they want to revise it their own way, or the SU just...
So we're not going to start where local boards are revising policies. I
And
mean,
that's fine, but
if we're
that's
gonna
what
do
this
that,
is
then we
saying.
have
Right, but that's
zero-
not what she's saying.
No, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
that's what this is saying, so we have to revise
No,
it
it's
to what we
saying,
want
well,
it
it's
to say.
saying, yeah, you can suggest revisions.
Well, how about we just take out?
Suggest revisions?
Yeah, just take out adopt or. Just the adopting board may suggest revisions to a policy developed by the SU board.
But that the SU board adopts it and the local board has to accept it? I mean,
Well, this is just going to cover, the first part, like the first reads, so.
So should you say that? Suggest revisions, first read.
I mean, I think
But-
the full board.
so the issue is, so Rutland Town, so I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm
Okay.
trying to make this read the way we want it to read. So Rutland Town sends it back next month, all right? Not this policy, a totally different policy.
But policies don't need to be sent back to the policy committee. The
So-
policy committee is
No,
already...
I'm not saying policy committee.
Okay, I just want that to be clear. The policy
So-
committee's already looked at the policies,
Yep.
made the revisions.
It comes to
and
the
she's
SU
talking
board.
about
Something
And the
So,
totally
policy
yeah,
committee-
I'm not saying that.
The policy
What-
committee is
Well, who are you
extension.
sending it back to?
Oh,
This board?
The SU board.
Okay.
But Rutland Town didn't pass it, but Middletown Springs and Wells did, and Quarry Valley did. Now what? Because two of the local boards were very happy with it, the way it was, but Rutland Town said, I didn't like this. And so they say, we're not accepting it, we're not adopting it, as is. But the other two boards said, we are. Then what?
Well, did you send back the revisions to this board? Because you had the opportunity from the first read
So this
to
is,
send that
yeah,
back.
this is what I'm talking about. This is the first read. So the first reads were accepted and approved for second read
Here.
here,
Yep.
and sent back. So this is, I'm talking about our June meetings, okay? The SU meets. We're going to have new policies, all right, whatever they are. The new policies are then going to get approved or not. The ones that get approved as first reads go to the local boards the next week.
Right.
At the local boards the next week, Quarry Valley and Middletown Springs and Wells, they say, yay, put on to second reads. Rutland Town says, I don't like this part, I want this revised. So send it back to the SU board.
So why
So then
didn't the
Jill-
Rutland Town representative and the policy committee say it was a problem?
They didn't know until they brought it as a first read. And then some other people said, you know what, I don't like this, and they, the two members didn't know about it.
I think this kind of goes back to, like some of the conversations we had last year, and
Yeah.
a lot of policies that would get to, and this was always my biggest issue, is that we would have policy committee, and then we would have first reads, and then second reads, and then, because, we'd have board meetings throughout the whole month, and then one board would send it back on a second read. I think that really, it's just a matter of making these expectations clear, so that when these policies now, in this new process, they go through the committee, they go through this board, and then when they come to the local boards, we have to, say like, these are the first reads, any suggestions or changes need to happen now, and then, each board should be making a motion to warn it for adoption for the next meeting. And if anyone's, if the full board agrees, by way of a motion and says, okay, we don't like this, then it would go back. But if not, then if one or two people just don't like it, then, by majority would still pass on, and then.
But what if by majority, the board says, I don't like this, send it back? Then what? Because that's not
Expectation
written
of the
here.
first read needs to be.
But that
made.
was their first read. That's what my point is. It's their first
It would go back
read.
to the SU board.
But the other two local boards already approved it.
For a first read, no.
For a first
Well, we
read.
didn't
first
te- We
read.
didn't technically approve it, no.
No, you approved it as
We
a
do it
first
on the
read.
second read.
You're
Yeah.
approving it to move to a second read.
Yeah, so
And
we're...
I've seen policies come back for second read where you've made changes.
So what,
So we
Really,
have to check it out again.
This is part of the first.
She's saying it's not written.
It's not written here,
It's
what
not written.
happens.
That's what she's saying.
What you're doing is, you're saying conditionally, we agree to what's written for the first read. What we're saying is, conditionally, I agree with that. It goes to Tina, and she doesn't agree with that, it comes back. It's still conditional. It hasn't been passed
But it's
yet.
not saying that.
I understand that.
That's what she's saying.
Right.
So
So
this
what
may-
do you want
Can I
that
just
first,
finish my-
yeah, sorry.
Finish my thought, is that we have to remember that the policy committee is commissioned by this board to do a job. They're an extension of us. They're doing a job that we don't want to do.
I
We
totally
said-
agree with you.
Yeah, so,
Okay?
We're not sending it back to policy committee, but I'm just saying, like, this should actually read, like, maybe it should say something, could suggest revisions to a first read policy.
I don't think we need to.
But even that,
Policy is broad and not be, if we spell every aspect of how we do this in the policy, I mean,
so if they suggest revisions to a policy, then what happens?
Right.
I'm
she's
just,
asking what the process is.
yeah, it's not
What's the
written
process?
down.
Well, then it has to come back to this board, because the SU board is the governing board.
Right.
With this new process, yeah. it would come
And so
back
then
to-
what happens? So the SU board says, we're not changing it, and sends it back to Rutland Town. Rutland Town says, well, we're not adopting it.
Then it'll say at the bottom of the policy that Rutland Town did not adopt it.
So that's all it says?
It would just say
So
down
then,
here.
so then would Rutland Town need to make their own policy?
I don't think we've had that situation yet. mean-
I think that that's why we've had a lot of
I
circles.
fail to see what is going to be so egregious about any policy that it's going to rise to that level. I mean, I know that there have been discussions, but honestly, most of these policies, when we merged, came from the RCSU, which came from Rutland Town and Proctor writing the policies. So,
Or their VSB.
well, template,
Required,
yeah.
right.
So I'm not, I think we're looking for a problem that doesn't exist.
But she's saying, it says, she's saying it's not, I get what you're saying, okay? If you're going to make a policy, you're going to write it so that you don't have a problem.
Right, and this
Okay,
is
and she's
not
saying the
saying
way
that.
it's written right now, there's a problem. That's what I'm hearing her say.
But it says.
Whether it's
after-
right or wrong, she's
After
saying that.
consideration of the comments and information provided by interested individuals, the adopting board may adopt or suggest revisions to a policy developed by the GRCSU board. What would that say instead? I mean, should it say information provided by school board members?
I think there should be I don't know. I mean, if they're not, like you said, if they're not happy with it, then what? I mean.
I guess we could follow up with the VSBA and see what happens, that if one district decides not to adopt.
I'm not saying it would happen often, but it's just not, it
Or
doesn't
send
give
them the
anything.
language.
Yeah.
That's all I think she's saying, is maybe send them the language and let them look at it.
Well, if you haven't adopted it, your name's not going to be on the second page. It's quite simple. That's number one. So if your board hasn't adopted it, then your district name is not going to be down here where it says date warned, date adopted.
Right, but we want all their names on it, so
So I you know,
I would just send
I
it to them and
can't-
let them look at it.
I can't tell you how many times we've had policies adopted by half of the boards. And
Yeah,
then one send it back, and then in the process start all over again.
Yeah.
Because it's gotta go back.
Such a
all the
huge
other-
waste of time.
yeah.
And, you know, every time a suggestion came through and we went through the whole process again, it was never rejected by anybody else. And I think what we're talking about is this new process that we just started should cover exactly what you're talking about, because we've got the committee, we've got a 10-person board, and then it goes to local boards. There really shouldn't be an issue. If we're just talking about wordsmithing here, we should just take out the adopt or, so that way at least there's the option that local boards can still weigh in and suggest revisions like they should be able to.
On first reads? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to say first reads, because let's say,
But if they
let's
keep-
say in a
yeah.
year, we have a model policy that was revised. Does a policy committee really need to go through and meet to review one like, let's say a required policy, it could just come to this board, it's a model policy, this board can just send it out, and then districts look at it, you know, I mean, the process doesn't have to stay the same all the time. And if boards are warning them for adoption, then that kind of covers it, and, you know, that's just my thought. I don't know.
I mean, we had said that when we had first read policies, that the motion would be, a motion would be in order to warn this policy for a second read. So if we're saying that here, we're saying there's no changes to the policy. When I go to Quarry Valley and I read the first read policy and say, a motion would be in order to warn for a second read, if nobody at my board says anything, time lost. You should have said it there. You should have said right there, because the motion has been made to warn the policy for second read. So we're not going to come, when it comes back around the second time, and dissect the policy, because the board already made a motion to warn it for a second read.
So my question is, if one local board suggests revisions to
the first read policy. Yeah.
Then does it go back out as a first read to the other boards, or do they keep the one that they liked the first time?
It would go back out, you know.
But it can go out the second read with that change. I mean,
Which could then become, right, the second read.
yeah.
But it wasn't what they necessarily agreed to the first time.
Yeah, so my thought is, you know, let's say next week, someone doesn't like this policy. But because, like, because all of our meetings are in 1 week, you know, it will know. And then it's not spread out through the whole month, and at least it would come back, and this is just my thought on how this would work, it would come back to the SU meeting next month for a suggested change. Now, I really encourage that if someone doesn't like something in a policy language-wise, that the board come up with suggestive language other than just saying, I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was always another problem too, is things coming back to committee with really no guidance on.
Well, I mean, I know you don't like it, but I was just going to say could adopt or revise for their own, I mean, it was mostly what they want, but you know, this little difference, and then that goes in their handbook, but you don't like that idea. I mean, if you read the model policy from...
I don't like the idea of what, that you have a standalone policy?
Correct.
I don't, because we have one superintendent and one assistant superintendent, and they're seeing over all the districts. And we have professional staff that move across buildings. So why should you, or why should one district be entitled? So now we have to keep track. Okay, this is a Rutland Town policy, but these are Quarry Valley and Middletown Springs. And this is a Middletown policy, but this is a Quarry Valley policy. It's insane.
I totally agree. So I'm wondering if maybe it makes sense for the local board, so maybe what you're saying, like model policies are basically model policies. Sending those to the local boards first and getting revision, I'm just saying, not even have a policy committee, just send the model policy and then send it here. And then the local boards accept, I don't know, something's, I don't know.
This is the policy that goes to the top of the policy. And if you don't get this right, then nothing of them underneath this.
I still don't think that this...
Maybe just take out suggest revisions and leave it alone.
May adopt.
And just may adopt. May adopt a policy. Who put the red in anyway? Did somebody make a decision?
The policy committee.
The policy committee, okay.
That was a suggestion of the committee.
Okay, could we get rid
So
of it?
meanwhile, the policy committee is made up of somebody from every board, district. This board is made up of someone from every district, so.
I mean, I'm not saying it happens very often, but it doesn't
It does seem
spell
like
out.
we've had, I swear to God, I have said before, we have had more conversation about policy than we have had about.
And this is a policy
anything.
about
That's
policies.
okay. Come on, now that's okay. We all love the policy.
I'm just, I don't know.
They got suggest revisions. They adopt.
I wouldn't mind looking at this section in the policy committee again. We're meeting May 22nd, just looking at this and see if we can come up with a better way to word it to make it more finite instead of circular.
Yep.
I feel like there's just no endpoint with the way it's written.
Okay. So let's do that.
Just to add.
How about a motion is in order to send A1 roll-in adoption
I'll
to
make that
school
motion.
board?
Go, Tina. I'm right
Back
behind.
to policy.
I agree with you. It doesn't make.
Discussion. All those in,
We're gonna have discussion or not?
yes, we are.
And, you know, Eric's got a point that you can't keep doing this. You can't keep rolling it back and forth, back and
Well,
forth.
that's
back and
why
forth.
we have
So
switched
what has to happen is the intermediate time, between the time of the first,
Yeah.
and people need to be responsible and responsive to the committee to say, this is the things we need
Right.
to adjust. After that, the door sort of closes.
Yeah.
And that's what Eric's talking about. He says, sometimes we get comments that I don't like this, but no direction as to what happens after that.
Well,
So
I think
how can they make a change?
At some point,
Comments
we
after
just gotta
first
vote
reading.
Or
on a
maybe-
policy, and,
sorry.
and that's it. And,
In the,
you know, I keep saying this, like, I think what we're doing now is probably the best method of policy development that we probably should have done a long time ago. So I feel really strongly that what we're doing now is better, but we just started.
no,
We just
no, I
started, and we
agree.
haven't given it a chance, and we're already tearing it apart. I mean,
No, I don't want to change, I don't want, I'm just trying to figure out how to make this work,
Okay.
not be
So-
circular.
That's going to go back to policy.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Tina.
Motion passes unanimously. All right, the next meeting date is June 6th. July meeting date must be on the 4th of July. So, what? So are you available to meet at a different time that week, Chris, or?
Sure, the 5th, 6th, 7th is open, well, not the 7th, but the 5th and 6th. That following Monday, the 10th is open as well.
Okay. What about July 10th? How does that work for people? Wait, what Monday is that? The third Monday?
That's the second one.
Oh, that's not good. Sorry. So what were the other ones? Wednesday?
Wednesday the 5th and then Thursday the 6th. So both open.
How about Wednesday the 5th? How does that work?
That's good.
Okay, so Wednesday, July 5th. July 5th. And maybe we'll be in a new home. We will be in a new home. We won't be here. We won't be here.
That's right.
I give up. I'll forget.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll, place to be determined, I guess, right?
To be announced.
To be announced, yeah. Or should we just say West Rutland, just to be on the safe side?
We say West Rutland School.
Okay, let's just say West Rutland Library, just to be on the safe side.
Oh, I like
Is
that.
that for July or both?
For
July.
July. Just on the off chance that
Yeah.
we're not all unpacked on July
One at the
1st.
school, do you want at the town hall?
I think
West
that's the
Rutland
schools.
Library?
Yeah, in the school, the library in the school.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we need to check
Perfect.
with them, make sure they're not ripping the carpet out or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, Louis?
We could go into the gym if we had to, right?
Yeah, we can find, why, you get a new carpet?
Okay. Not that I know.
Okay.
Saying, but you never know, we don't.
All right, second public comment. Is there anything anyone would like to address that's transpired during the meeting? God, don't let it be about policy.
Quote, the chair.
Tammy,
Hi there. Yeah, I'm not asking a question about policy.
thank you.
Just for future reference, the camera, I've only seen a select few people. It would be more beneficial to actually see maybe the board chair that speaks or the whole group, just a little
Way
feedback
to
there.
focus it.
Yeah, it's just the way we're set up in here. I think it's weird, so. And they make me sit behind a curtain the whole time when I chair, so.
That's
Wizard
not
of Oz.
fun.
It's the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I think it's just weird the way, I think on Pig TV, when you watch it, he has a much better angle. So ours is just, our camera is stationary once we set it up.
In July, it'll be,
Yeah, in July, we're gonna be like high tech. Well, maybe not.
Okay,
Maybe September.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah.
no
Okay.
problem. Have a
Anybody
good night.
else? All right, we can do without the personnel executive session due to the lateness of the hour. So a motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
At 9:08, motion by Mike. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you all very much.